Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto had the strength to be Hokage at age 10 part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. The old man Hokage stood smiling in front of the 10-year-old boy. The boy with sun-kissed hair sat in a red velvet seat in front of the Hokage's desk. So young and yet already won the most powerful shinobi in Fire Country. Nobody would have guessed that the Nine Tails chakra would have almost completely merged with his body in such a short time, thought the old man. The boy's eyes were calm and calculated. He was always on guard, just like he was trained to be. He wasn't a cold person, no, he was just professional. Naruto, said the old man, you are only 10 years old and are already at a point in power that is considered Kage level. The boy stared at him with a small, modest smile. He bowed his head in thanks. The old man continued to smile. Time and again you have proven yourself, and I have seen with my own eyes that you are a natural leader. You may have never been to the academy or taken a single exam to give you a rank, but the fact of the matter is you were trained by the best, Jiraiya and myself. The council has agreed that you are ready for this to be our next Hokage. The old man let his words sink in. It was clear to see that the boy was honored in every respect of the word. I don't know what to say, thank you, said Naruto. However, before it is official, I have one more assignment for you, said the old man. You and Kakashi's Umbu squad are to go to our borders and eliminate a group of Rokunin. They are all highly skilled, the 7 that there are said to be the strongest in Earth Country. The boy nodded in confirmation. Very well, I will leave immediately. The Hokage now stood in front of his tower, a group of Umbu behind him. He stared out to the road and saw the small figure making its way towards them. Naruto stepped forward, his height SP adorned proudly on his forehead. He wore a tight black shirt and ninja pants. On close inspection one could see that his body was conditioned better than even some of the Umbu. Well, you have your orders, go, ordered the Hokage. They all nodded and left in a flash. The Hokage watched their retreating forms and got a strange feeling in his gut, but he chose to ignore it. He looked at the boy and thought, he will be the youngest Hokage in history. Already he has surpassed me, and I was said to be the greatest of the Hokage. Well, the fourth was in a league of his own, much like Naruto, I suppose. Oh well, like father, like son. 2 days had passed when the Hokage received word that the group was on their way back. He, as well as several renowned members of the council, stood at the gates waiting. They looked out onto the road and waited. It took a couple of minutes, but then they saw one figure make his way forward. The figure reached the gates before the other squad members came into view. The Hokage, as well as the council, looked at the one figure that was now walking towards them. His entire body was covered in blood, none of it his own, and only a speck of his sun-kissed hair showed. His eyes were shadowed by his bangs as he made his way forward. The old man smiled. He could count from here that all members of the squad were walking towards them from a distance. He looked back to the boy, who was now walking slowly towards him. I trust all went well. He was cut off as he saw Naruto take off his height. He walked directly in front of the man, not showing his eyes, as they remained hidden in his hair. He took the old man's hand and placed his height in his hand. I quit, said Naruto. He didn't wait for the man to respond and just continued to walk forward past all of them. Not saying another word, he went towards his home and away from his shinobi career. The rest of the squad made its way towards them. All the members were completely unharmed. Kakashi, what happened? Asked the old man, still in a state of shock. The council listened as well, for they had just heard their future Hokage quit his life as a shinobi. Naruto was brilliant, sir, said Kakashi. He, as well as the rest of the Umbu, were clearly oblivious to the fact that Naruto had just quit. Somehow the Rock knew we were coming and had an ambush set for us. There were over 200 nin, sir. Naruto took them all out single-handedly, even the 7 we were assigned to kill. Did anything happen to Naruto? Asked the old man, staring at the blood-covered height in his hand. No, well, he was awfully quiet on the way back. He didn't stay with the group, always a bit ahead of us. Why? Asked Kakashi. Because unless both I and the rest of the council heard incorrectly, Naruto just resigned from being a shinobi, said the Hokage, as well as being our next Hokage. All those present could only stare out at the distant form of a blood-covered boy. The Hokage closed his eyes and a single tear fell down one. Naruto, what happened? 5 years later. Oh, please let me help you, Naruto-sama, said a very attractive brunette. Her cleavage was all but bursting from her incredibly tight bikini. No, let me massage your shoulders, Naruto-sama, said an equally attractive redhead. Girls, you can both do it, said Naruto. A huge perverted grin was on his face, as well as a tremendous blush. Yay, we love you Naruto-sama! Shouted out both girls at the same time. How can we repay you? Naruto began laughing with joy like an idiot. Oh, I'm sure I will think of something. Naruto! Shouted out a figure. Wake up, you lazy idiot! A 15-year-old boy with sun-kissed hair woke up from atop some bags of flour. He wore a large straw hat on top of his head and wire-framed purple-shaded sunglasses that didn't even cover all of his eyes. He had on a tight white muscle shirt and on top of it a loose bright orange button-up shirt that wasn't buttoned up. He had tan shorts on that were torn near the bottom and sandals on his feet. Black bands adorned his wrists and ankles. He had rather long hair done back in a ponytail that went down his neck. Everything about him screamed one thing: lazy. And yet his body was what most people in their early 20s only dreamed about. The old ramen vendor couldn't figure out for the life of him how such a lazy boy could work out enough to be blessed with the body he had. He rubbed his eyes lazily. Oh, good morning, boss, said Naruto with a yawn. Naruto sat up with his legs crossed and reached over and grabbed a bottle. He poured himself a glass and began to drink. You want some sake, boss? Asked Naruto in a lazy tone, holding the bottle out. A vein appeared in the old man's balding head. I don't believe you, he shouted. When we first met, you begged me for a job. You said you would work harder than anyone I'd ever seen. But look at you, half the time you're asleep and the other half you're drunk. Naruto began to yawn. Boss, you need to relax. I don't want you to die on me from stress, said Naruto. I swear to you, if it wasn't for the fact that when you do work you make the best damn ramen I've ever tasted, you would be fired, said the old man. Naruto began waving his hand as if saying go away. But the fact is I do make the best ramen, so why bother arguing if you're not going to fire me? Said Naruto as he took another sip of his sake and refilled his glass. I can't believe the Hokage gave you special treatment and allows you to drink that stuff. You're only 15 for heaven's sakes, said the old man. Naruto held his bottle tighter and began to rub his cheek against it. Well, if I didn't have this gift from heaven I would probably go psycho and kill everyone, said Naruto as he began to laugh at his joke. The old man began to laugh nervously, wondering if it really was a joke. He took a couple steps back just in case. Well, enough of my break, time to get to work, said Naruto, standing up. He was already in the kitchen. He slowly walked over to where a huge pile of dough lay. His face instantly became serious as he began to work. In a matter of minutes he had one of the most perfectly prepared ramen dishes ever made in front of him. Voila, said Naruto. He grabbed the bowl and put it on the counter. A very attractive woman came up and grabbed it. Naruto smiled, as she was about to pay for it. No, miss, I can't allow you to pay for that, it wouldn't be right. The woman looked up at him surprised. But what do you mean I must pay for it? She said. Your beauty is payment enough, said Naruto. A blush rose on her cheeks as she quickly took the ramen to her seat. She was with a man that appeared to be her boyfriend. Mom, I want a bite of yours, said a boy in his seat next to the woman. Scratch that, the man next to her was her husband, and he was now glaring daggers at Naruto. Naruto let out a sigh as he looked at the two together. Someday, he said to himself. The old ramen chef came up behind him and smacked him on his head. What were you thinking giving that ramen away for free? That money is coming out of your pay, he said. And what do you mean someday? You go through more girls a week than I did my entire life of dating. Somehow you didn't. I'm not surprised, said Naruto. The old man began to glare at. But I don't love any of them, said Naruto. Naruto sighed. You're way too serious. Naruto lied back on the sacks of flour, pulling his straw hat over his eyes. Wake me up when you need me, I'm going to sleep. Say, isn't that the legendary Tsunade without a top on? Said the old man. Naruto was up in an instant. Where? Said Naruto. The ramen chef sighed. Get back to work now, he said. Naruto looked at him, realizing he had been tricked. Naruto grumbled at this and went back to work. Slave driver, mumbled Naruto before he yawned yet again. Customers came and went, each one more than satisfied with their meal. Naruto was one of the best chefs in Konoha, if not one of the best in Fire Country. At least that's how he felt. Dad, I'm back, shouted Ayam as she walked into the stand. Ayam was 18 years old, long brown hair and brown eyes, and beautiful in every sense of the word. Now Naruto was a bit of a pervert as well as a flirt, he knew it, and so did almost all the female population of Konoha. But the one girl he had the utmost respect for, and the only one he would ever think of as a sister, was Ayam. Ayam Nichin, said Naruto, stumbling over to her. How was your journey? I trust everything went well. Naruto-kun, you're drunk, aren't you? Said I. That may be true, but that doesn't mean I wasn't worried about you, said Naruto. I only went to the store down the street. That far? Said Naruto with astonishment. How could possibly have done it? I let out a sigh. There's just no talking to this boy. Oh well, that's why he's so fun, thought I. Did you buy me anything? Asked Naruto with a hopeful glint in his eye. I just shook her head. Naruto put his head down and went back to cooking. I only laughed at this. The street was dark and barren. Only two figures made their way down it, the moon lighting their path. I swear, Naruto, you really got to stop. That stuff is going to kill you, said I, holding Naruto up with her shoulder. Naruto had a goofy smile on, and his face was flushed from the alcohol he had in his system. I'll stop when I'm dead, declared Naruto in a drunken slur. At the rate you're going, that won't take long, said I. Naruto just continued to give his drunken smile. They were almost to their destination when trouble happened. Several figures made their way out of an alley and surrounded the two. They were all dressed in loose clothing. Some of their cloths were actually torn. Slowly they began to surround the two of them. One man who looked to be a little over 21 stepped forward. His black hair was cropped downward over his skull. He wore a loose tank top and wore similar shades to Naruto's. Hey beautiful, said the man. How's about you play with us for a bit? Play? Said Naruto in a drunken stupor. I am Nichin, you've made friends, this is wonderful. Naruto then put his arm over his eyes and began to cry. Why didn't you tell me? I thought we were friends. The men of the gang began to smile. The boy that was with the girl was drunk. They had all thought they would have to beat him to get to her, but as it seemed it would be like taking candy from a baby. Yeah, friends, so what do you say? Said the man to I. She didn't get the chance to reply, as one member of the group came up behind her and grabbed her. Her eyes narrowed, and she elbowed him in the stomach. He let go of her and doubled over. She then planted a kick to his face, sending him to the ground unconscious. Wow, I am Nichin plays so rough with her friendess, said Naruto, taking another swig from the sake bottle in his hands. Two more men came up to her. She jumped in the air with the grace of a trained shinobi and did a spin kick, hitting both her opponents in their skulls, knocking them out. Another came up from behind and she threw a punch to his nose, which gave way with a snap. The leader of the group stepped forward. She tried to throw a punch at him, but he caught it with ease. You little bitch, he said before backhanding her in the face. Her world began to spin as she was sent tumbling to the ground. The force behind the blow had been great, and she was barely conscious. Naruto, help, she said. The leader and everyone in the group looked at the drunken boy as he stood there silently. The straw hat shadowed his eyes as they waited. The leader with his black cropped hair took a step forward towards him. And what is this girl's little hero going to do? He was cut off as he heard a sound coming from the boy. He bent down slightly and took a look. Naruto's eyes were closed, and his mouth hung open. Loud snores could be heard escaping from his mouth, and drool began to travel down his chin. Everyone present's sweat dropped, especially I. Naruto, she said, embarrassed. The leader gave a loud laugh as he turned around and looked at her. Where were you really thinking he could help? Said the man, unable to contain his laughter. He let out another howl that he called a chuckle, and was about to make his way forward when something happened. An open palm backhanded him in the side of his head, sending him flying into a wall, knocked out on contact. Well, what's the big idea? Shouted out the blonde drunk. Naruto stood there looking pissed, his face still flushed from the sake. I was sleeping and this ass starts laughing loud enough to break the sound barrier. The people present stared out in silent shock, as Naruto began to whine. And I was having such a nice dream too. Naruto looked around the area at everyone there. Where am I? Who are all you people? He shouted. He began to stumble forward, drunk as a fish. I know you were laughing too, weren't you? He said, walking over to one of the gang members who started to back away. No, wait, said the man. Why did you do that? Slurred Naruto. Tears fell from his eyes over his flushed face. Did you laugh because you thought I looked funny? I'll have you know I've been called handsome on a number of occasions. Naruto's face then grew angry with rage. He slammed his fist into the gang member's face, sending him crashing back. Why, you said, another gang member with a bald head and sunglasses. He threw a punch at Naruto's face. Naruto bent backwards on a horizontal angle, avoiding the punch. His arms began swimming at his sides as he tried to stay balanced. His one foot shot in the air as he was falling back, hitting the bald man straight in the jaw. The force knocked him out. Naruto pivoted on his foot so that his front was facing the ground if he fell forward. Instead, he began to stumble forward, and in attempt to get his balance, he began to run forward to keep up with the rate he was falling at. His head slammed into a gang member's chest that was behind him, as he rammed him into a wall. Naruto lifted his head and the back of it hit the man hard in the chin, rendering him unconscious. Naruto clutched the back of his head with both of his hands. Ow, that hurt. Naruto stood up again and looked at the remaining men as they took what looked like fighting stances. Another drunken goofy grin came on Naruto's face. So you want to fight? He slurred. I have to warn you, I a great fighting master. Naruto began to take several posses as if going through fighting stances. He rushed forward at one of his opponents at surprising speed, but tripped and began to somersault towards him instead. When he reached him, he immediately sprung upright. He was still dizzy and had rolled too much, so he appeared off balance. His forehead slammed into the man's nose. He then shoved both his wrists into the man's ribs, which was the only indication that Naruto had done that to attack. Naruto spun around and was greeted by another man. The gang member threw a punch at him. Naruto bent backwards and landed on his knuckles. He then kicked the man in the stomach with his right foot. The man doubled over and Naruto hopped off his right foot and kicked him with it. Naruto began to roll on his body towards another member. The man looked scared and didn't know what to expect. Naruto stopped rolling right in front of him, his eyes spinning in spirals. So dizzy? Said Naruto. The man smiled and lifted his foot in the air to take a step forward. However, at that moment Naruto began to roll again, taking the man's foot out from underneath him. The man's rear end was still sticking up in the air. Naruto got up from behind him and looked at it. He smiled. Never show your back to your opponent, said Naruto, as he kicked the man's butt hard. The gang member sailed across the ground face first into a stone wall. Naruto righted himself and looked around. He blinked and then looked at Ayam, who was getting up off the ground. Hello Ayam Nichan, when did you get here? Asked Naruto as he stumbled over to her. She looked at him and then began to giggle. You're drunk, she said. I am not, said Naruto on instinct, completely ignoring the fact that at the current moment he was seeing two of her. Let me take you home, she said with a smile, taking his arm and putting it over her shoulder. Naruto gave another goofy smile and then looked around at all the men that were unconscious on the ground. Wow, I am Nichan, you sir are popular. I mean, look at all the guys that have fallen for you, said Naruto, swinging his arm around to show all the unconscious gang members. Ayam began to giggle, which soon developed into a full-blown laughter. Like she had always thought Naruto was defiantly fun. On a rooftop nearby, a silver-haired jounin with his hide covering his left eye and a mask watched the scene with amusement. He too gave a small laugh before he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. The familiar scene of the Hokage in his office with the gathered jounin played into the view of one Hatake Kakashi. The jounin walked into the room late as usual. His masked face, that drove many to insanity over, was buried deep in a little orange book. A few of his colleagues eyed him angrily. Well, now that you have arrived, I guess we can begin the team registration, said the Hokage. Kakashi only paid minor attention to the old man as he named some of the teams. Team 7 will be led by Hatake Kakashi. Your team will consist of Uchiha Sasuke, Hirono Sakura, and Hyuga Hanabi. Kakashi left the room after that, not needing to hear the rest. He let out a sigh. How unfortunate that this year's most promising genin would get him as a sensei. He was almost positive he would fail them. He had a lot to think about. I could use some ramen, he said with a smile. No, I shouldn't. I have a boyfriend, said the blushing redhead. It pains my heart to hear you say that, said Naruto with a look of passion in his eyes. Please allow me just a sample of what it would have been like had our paths crossed earlier. He leaned in to kiss her, and to the surprise of many who were secretly listening and watching, she did too. Their lips were mere inches apart. He could feel the heat of her breath as she drew closer. Naruto! Shouted out a rough voice behind him. He was instantly smacked over the head with a frying pan. Get back to work, you lazy bum! Naruto rubbed his head and looked at the cook. He then turned around but found the woman he had been wooing was already out the door, clutching her blushing cheeks in embarrassment. Aw man, I was this close, said Naruto, holding up his hand showing his index finger and thumb merely a centimeter apart. Hell, well, another day. He poured some of his sake into a saucer and began to drink. He felt the sharp taste of the liquid enter his throat and gave a pleased sigh. Excuse me, I would like to order, said a voice that was familiar to the blonde. He turned around and was greeted with the face of Kakashi. Kakashi, said Naruto, very surprised. He took the bottle in his hand and gave it a good chug. Susu, what can I get for you? Naruto gave a smile. One large miso, said Kakashi. Naruto nodded and took on a serious face. He rushed at the dough and began spinning out noodles. In no time at all he had it ready. He placed it in front of the man. He stared at Kakashi's face and waited. Kakashi began to pull down his mask. Naruto began to sweat with anticipation. Suddenly something got caught in the boy's nose, causing him to sneeze and look away for only a second. When he looked back he saw the bowl empty and Kakashi with his mask still adorned. He looked at it, as if it were mocking him. "Naruto, do you mind if we talk for a while?" said Kakashi. Naruto looked at him for a minute, then ushered him over to a booth. "Why don't you ever visit me?" said Naruto. "It's been 5 years. I've been busy. If you were so lonely you could have visited yourself," said Kakashi. "I too was busy doing stuff," said Naruto, pouring some more sake into the saucer. He took another sip. Kakashi could tell he was getting tipsy, and hoped he would be able to keep a conversation with the blonde. "I'm taking on a team there about your age," said Kakashi. "That's great." So the old man brought up the age for graduation, said Naruto. "One of them is the old age, she's 12. I see. What do you need to tell me?" Kakashi looked down at the table for a little while. "I need advice," he said. "Advice? Why would you think I could help?" said Naruto. The two of them were silent for a little while. Naruto waited for his response. "I normally fail a team without giving them much of a chance. However, this year looks promising. I just don't know what to do. I'm very sure I can train them to fight very well if they pass, but there is so much more that I will be unable to teach them," said the man. "My advice is this: give them a fair shot in your test, but make sure they fully understand what it means to be a shinobi," said Naruto with sad eyes. He took another sip of his sake. "As for what you're getting at about teaching, I have no advice." Naruto turned and left the booth. However, he paused a couple steps away. He turned around and flashed a lazy smile on his slightly flushed face. "Things have a way of working out if you let them," said Naruto. "Feel free to stop by with your team anytime. It would be nice if we got a couple of regulars around here." Kakashi smiled and waved as the boy who could have been Hokage turned and went back to work. Naruto was getting bored. He had been working for a while now. He looked at the clock and gave an agitated sigh. "I can't take this," said Naruto. He walked over to Ayam, who was currently washing dishes. "Hey, do you think you can cover for me? I don't feel too much like working right now." Ayam gave him an angry look. "Fine, but you owe me Uzumaki," she said. Naruto jumped for joy and gave her a hug. "Thank you, Ayam-nichan," said Naruto. He was out the door in seconds. Naruto now calmly strolled down the street, tilting his empty bottle over his mouth, trying to get any drops that were left. "Out," he said, and threw the bottle away. He continued on his way when he sensed a presence behind him. He turned around and saw a mess of brown-haired duck behind a tree. Naruto sighed. He kept walking when he just suddenly fell forward and fell asleep. The figure that was pursuing approached him confused. The figure was a boy around 12 years old. He wore a long white t-shirt with the Konoha leaf symbol on it, as well as a pair of jeans. On his brown hair he sported a pair of goggles. "Is he asleep?" he asked to himself. He walked up to the body that was snoozing in the middle of the road. Before he could react, the boy latched onto his foot. "Ah! Get it off, get it off!" Naruto propped himself up. "So what do you want?" asked Naruto. The boy blushed, embarrassed at being caught, and rubbed the back of his neck. "I was wondering if you could help me," said the boy. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "I saw you at the ramen stand with that girl." Naruto remembered the redhead he almost got a kiss from, before the old man interrupted. "You saw that? Oh well, I guess I didn't try to hide it," said Naruto. The boy got down on his knees. "Please, I beg you, teach me how to impress this one girl I like," said the boy. A perverted blush came on Naruto's face. "Ho, so this is about a girl. Well, how could I say no? Konohamaru," responded the boy. "Konohamaru, well, let's get specifics. How old is she?" "Your age, my age, younger," said Naruto. "If she's 10 or under, I refuse to help." "She's my age," said Konohamaru. The boy looked down at the ground. "Me and her are actually friends. See, the thing is, I want her to see me as something more." Konohamaru looked back up at the boy and saw him flipping through an orange book. "I think I can help you. I remember a similar situation between the characters Rei and Kyo. And what a situation it was," said Naruto with a perverted grin on his face. "Well, let us get to work." Konohamaru blinked as if realizing something. "Are you drunk?" asked Konohamaru. "Thanks for reminding me. I need to go buy more sake," said Naruto. Don't worry, I'm only a little tipsy right now, so I can still help you. Konohamaru seemed to think about the situation. He then remembered Naruto with the red head. Fine, teach me how to do what you did today. I doubt no matter what you do that she will actually go out with me, but maybe I can get her to give me at least one kiss. Speaking of her, may I ask what her name is? Said Naruto. Hitomi Moegi, said Konohamaru. Alright, let's introduce ourselves. I am Hatake Kakashi and I don't want to tell you anything else, said Kakashi with a smile. Okay, who's next? You, Pinky. I am Haruno Sakura. What I like is, or rather who I like is. She squeals for a second. As for my dreams, well, oh my, I couldn't. Her face is blushing furiously in between her hands. Right, you Hyuga go, said Kakashi. My name is Hyuga Hanabi. I like training. My dream is to gain the title of heir over my worthwhile, my less talented sister. She finished. Her face remained stony. Uchiha go, said Kakashi. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. There is a lot I don't like and not much I do. My dream, no, my ambition is to revive my clan and kill a certain man, said Sasuke. Well, okay, meet me tomorrow at training ground 7 and 4 a.m. sharp, said Kakashi. There you guys will be given your final test. They all looked confused. Final test? Said Sakura. What do you mean? I mean there is one more test before it is decided if you become Genins, said the copy nin. Well, I'm off, and I wouldn't eat breakfast otherwise you'll throw up. He then disappeared in a blur of motion, leaving his stunned students behind. Sakura followed Sasuke and Hanabi went her own way. Naruto and Konohamaru spent almost all night up thinking of ways to have Konohamaru seduce the girl of his dreams. Alright, let's go find her, said Naruto. Both of them exited the apartment complex to the streets. Both of them went to spot near the bridge and hid in a tree. Konohamaru easily jumped in it while Naruto scurried up climbing it. Alright, everyday me, Moegi, and Udan meet here, said Konohamaru. He and Naruto waited, and sure enough 2 figures began to make their way towards the bridge. Naruto looked at them carefully. The first was a boy that wore glasses and a black turtleneck, and he had black fingerless gloves on his hands and a small bit of snot coming out of his nose. The other was who Naruto assumed was Moegi. She had long orange-red hair that was tied into a ponytail by her neck. She had hazel eyes, and on closer inspection she was definitely well endowed for her age. Naruto gave a low whistle. Wow, girls are sure developing young these days, said Naruto. Konohamaru began to laugh. Huh, what's so funny? Well, you see. He stopped and giggled some more. When we were younger, Moegi was very flat-chested. When we played ninja, she would often introduce herself as the Kanuchi with the body and beauty of a full-grown woman. Looking back on it now, she is starting to live up to that. Konohamaru began to laugh some more. How, where is Konohamaru-kun? Asked Moegi to Udan. The boy shrugged and looked around. Alright, kid, you are going to approach her differently. I will observe from here. You can't be embarrassed when saying what I am about to tell you. Say it in a way only a friend would, okay? Said Naruto. Konohamaru looked at him, wondering if he should rely on an alcoholic. And remember, relax. Naruto patted him hard on the back. Konohamaru jumped down from the tree to greet his friends. Ahoy, howdy guys, said Konohamaru in a cheerful attitude. My Moegi-chan looking good as usual. Naruto studied the girl's face closely as Konohamaru said that. He was happy to see a faint blush appear on her face. Thank you, Konohamaru-kun, said Moegi. And Udan, wipe your nose, said Konohamaru. The boy took out a tissue and wiped. It will be back later, he said. Konohamaru walked up to both of them and wrapped his arms over their shoulders. He held them close so they were all cheek to cheek, something that could be considered a welcome from a friend who was just in a good mood. Once again Naruto studied Moegi as this happened. He saw the small blush deepen, but also observed that a small smile crept onto her face. Konohamaru-kun, are you feeling okay? She asked. Konohamaru blinked and looked at her, faking innocence. Yes, why Moegi-chan? He asked, his face seeming confused. No reason, you just seem really cheerful today, she said. Yeah, what she said? Said Udan. And why shouldn't I be in a cheerful mood today? Said Konohamaru. Every day that passes means a chance to get stronger. Both his friends sighed at this as they followed him to the academy. The lessons were to say the least boring. Naruto was falling asleep from his post on a tree branch outside. The 3 friends sat next to each other doing everything they could to stay awake. Konohamaru leaned over and whispered to both of them. Hey, you guys want to go see a movie tonight? Asked Konohamaru. Oh god, do I. I've been so bored lately, said Moigi. Can't, it's Thursday, you know what me and my family do on Thursday, said Udon. Oh yeah, I forgot, sorry, said Konohamaru with an apologetic look on his face. However, on the inside he was smirking. Truth was, he knew exactly what day it was and was counting on the fact that Udon wouldn't be able to go. It's okay, you two can go without me. Okay, if you're sure, Udon-kun, said Moigi. The class ended a couple hours later. Konohamaru secretly wondered if Naruto was still waiting in the tree. Udon left the two of them to go home to his family and do it. Moegi left for home to change quickly, then she came back. His parents are so cruel for making him do it with them. A/N. I know how it sounds, perverts, but it's not that, said Moegi. Tell me about it. So what movie do you want to see? Moegi got stars in her eyes and Konohamaru instantly regretted asking. They ended up seeing a chick flick, at least in his opinion. However, to his immense luck, he had fallen asleep during the film, and his head ended up resting on Moigi's shoulder. It surprised him when he woke up to find it still there. The two of them exited the theater and walked home. It was already dark out and the streets were eerily quiet. Konohamaru observed the scene cautiously, and was rewarded for his caution by being able to duck under a fist that came around a corner. Before either of the two knew what they were surrounded. Well, now what have we here? Said a figure from the shadows. He had greasy black hair that cropped over his skull as well as a huge bruise on the side of his face. She's a bit younger than I like, but still she'll do. Konohamaru put his arms out in front of her to keep her safe. They all slowly closed in. The leader gave a small wink to Konohamaru that went unnoticed by Moegi. All of them jumped in the air at once to tackle them. Konohamaru could see how slow they were moving, did a spin kick hitting all of them in the face. One got up after the hit and grabbed a hold of Moegi. He had caught her by surprise, which was the only reason she was caught at all. He took out a knife and held it to her neck. Konohamaru instantly stopped. Isn't that taking it a little far? Thought Konohamaru. The man once again winked at him, giving Konohamaru the okay. Konohamaru rushed forward at speed that surprised even him. He was on the man in a second, quickly disarming him. He then delivered a kick to his face, sending him back. All the men got up and ran off. Yeah, that right, you better run, said Konohamaru. What was that? Said an angry-looking Moegi. What do you mean? I mean, what was with that horrible acting? They let you win, did you plan this? She had a look that promised doom to him. He looked down at the ground and sweat dropped. Yes, he said. She gave and stuck her chin up. And may I ask why? She said. Because I was trying to impress you, he said in all honesty. Baka, she said, hitting him on top of the head. You didn't need to do this. Once again he looked down at the ground, ashamed. If he had looked up, he would have seen her features soften. Before he knew it, he felt something wet on his cheek. He looked up and saw blushing Moegi take a step back from him. Maybe next time you should just ask me out, she said. He looked very surprised at this as she walked away. He put his hand to his cheek and started grinning like an idiot. See, our plan worked, said Naruto, coming out of a bush. Konohamaru instantly got an angry look on his face and slammed his fist onto the boy's head. What was that for? Asked Naruto. Plan nothing, you didn't help at all. I should have just asked her out instead of wasting my time fighting those goons you threatened, he shouted. Well, anyways, I'll see you around, I guess, said Konohamaru. He then turned and left. When the boy was out of sight, a lone figure made its way from the shadows of the alley to greet Naruto. He took a swig of his sake and looked at the orange-haired girl. Thanks for telling me he likes me, said a still blushing Moegi. No problem, said Naruto, once again taking in some sake. You know, you really should stop drinking, it's not right for someone your age, she said. Naruto gave out a small laugh in reply and waved her off. He turned around and began to walk away. Yes, Mom, he said. When he was out of reach of her, he began to wonder something. I wonder what it is, he asked himself. Udon's hours. Naruto peeked inside the window and saw a truly horrible sight in front of him. Udon was tied up and being forced to listen to his mother sing on the karaoke machine. It was just a karaoke night, a horrible karaoke night. Naruto felt sorry for the boy. Hyuga Hanabi stumbled into her room exhausted. She was pissed at the fact that she and her team had barely passed the exam. She really was mad at herself for not being able to do anything of significance when sparring with their jounin, as well as not being able to catch on to the meaning of the test. But still she had passed, and that's all that mattered. She had heard from her father that her sister's team had passed as well. It was also because of Hinata that they had succeeded, because she figured out the meaning of the test. Hinata, I'll show them all that I am more deserving than you. Naruto and Kakashi both sat at the stand together slurping down ramen. This time Kakashi had simply cut a hole in his mask so he could eat slower. This greatly pissed off Naruto. Someday, he said before he started laughing evilly. Kakashi just stared at him. Naruto, it's not even noon yet, how can you be drunk? Asked Kakashi. What, I'm not. Whatever, did you pass your team? Asked Naruto. Kakashi nodded. He seemed to have almost a faraway look in his eye. Barely, they performed as well as any other of the teams I tested, but unlike those teams I gave them a second chance, and they passed. Said Kakashi. They are all unique, but I wonder how I can help them. Naruto raised an eyebrow at this. He had never heard of a challenge Kakashi couldn't really handle. What do you mean? Well, you see, Haruno is more focused on getting the last Uchiha to date her than being a ninja. The Uchiha is obsessed with killing his brother, and the Hyuga, she's the worst of all. Said Kakashi with a sigh. Not only does she have that Hyuga arrogance, she completely hates her sister to the point where it is almost scary. Why does she hate her sister? Asked Naruto. Kakashi shrugged and then thought about it. Her sister is the clan's heir, but she totally lacks self-confidence. Hanabi thinks she is better than her and far more deserving of the title. Said Kakashi. You know, if someone gave her sister a push in the right direction, it could show her how wrong she is about certain things and that she still has a lot to learn. Naruto continued to slurp down on some ramen. Mednin, said Naruto. Kakashi looked at him confused. What? He asked. I'll only help her if she has the ability to be a Mednin, because that is all I will train her towards. Said Naruto. There was a silence between the two of them. Naruto got up and left the stand. It was completely within his right to do so since it was his day off. He thought about some things in his head as he headed towards the training ground. He felt the chakra he was looking for and headed towards it. Naruto carefully walked into the training field. It was getting late, but he could feel the signature he was looking for up ahead. Though he had never met her personally, Kakashi had told him of her and her team. This was their training ground, so it made sense that it would be her. He came into view of the clearing and saw a girl with bluish-black hair. She was currently beating up a training dummy using her family's style. Naruto studied her closely. Her movements were graceful, yet he could sense she was holding back power. He wondered why that was, considering it was only a training dummy. He continued to study her, and his eyes wandered. A perverted blush came onto his face. She tried to hide with that large coat of hers, but Naruto could see. At the age of 15 she has a D cup, thought Naruto. She turned around and looked at him with large white eyes. Who are you? Said Hinata. Naruto looked in her eyes and could tell she was slightly worried about him. Nervous and shy, huh? Thought Naruto. He put on a huge goofy smile and walked towards her. Greetings, Konuchi-san, said Naruto in a cheerful voice. Hinata seemed a little surprised at his greeting. Naruto had expected that much. He currently gave off a presence that was completely unthreatening. And may I ask what you are doing on this fine day? Said Naruto. Training, said Hinata in a hesitant low-toned voice. Oh, I see. Care to take a break and join me in a drink of sake? Sorry, I'm 15. She stuttered out. As am I, but I guess you don't have to drink if you don't want to, said Naruto, sitting down in front of her cross-legged. Excuse me, who are you? She managed. Me? Said Naruto, pointing at himself. He then brought his hand to his chin and closed his eyes in deep thought. I am the world's greatest ramen chef, Uzumaki Naruto. Hinata's eyes widened slightly. His introduction had caught her completely off guard. And you are Hyuga Hinata, correct? He asked. She gave a nod. Well then, Naruto got up. His presence suddenly seemed much darker. His large straw hat covered his eyes and blackened his face. He was by her side in a second. She closed her eyes in shock, but then she felt the rather fast pats on the back he was giving her. This is when you say it's nice to meet you, Naruto. He laughed. She looked at him a little surprised. There was once again no ill air around him. So sorry, it's very nice to meet you, she said. There you go, that's how you greet someone, he said, not stopping from patting her on the back. Sorry, but may I ask what you want? She said. Why, to gaze up at the stars with a beautiful girl, said Naruto. Her face turned a tremendous shade of red in seconds. Of all the things she thought he would say, that was not one of them. Just kidding. She let out a sigh and her blush faded. There are no stars out tonight. Her face became red again at what he had implied. Oh, she said. Actually, what I am here for is much more complicated, said Naruto. She looked at him confused. I have a friend who is currently training your sister, and through a strange series of circumstances he wants me to help train you. Hinata became even more confused. But you are just a ramen chef? She questioned. No, you're wrong, said Naruto, adopting a lazy but more serious tone. Hinata looked at him curious. I am the world's greatest ramen chef. She sweat dropped and looked at the ground. I am very sorry, but I don't see how you can help, she said. You hold back in your blows, stated Naruto, taking a sip of his sake saucer. Hinata looked up at him, her eyes wide with surprise. Your style is graceful and perfect, but you are moving slower than what you are actually capable of. You hold back because you are afraid. Her big white eyes filled with shock. How did you who are you? Asked Hinata. I told you I am Uzumaki Naruto, world's greatest ramen chef, said Naruto. You don't like hurting people, so how would you like to save them? What do you mean? She questioned. Naruto took a scroll out of his sleeve and threw it at her. There are some medical techniques in that scroll. I will help you learn them, as well as help you with a taijutsu style that flows perfectly with your jukin, said Naruto. Well, now I'll be going. Wait, aren't you going to help me train? Asked Hinata. Naruto froze up solid in mid-step. He slowly turned his head to face her. Why, you mean right now? Said Naruto. Hinata gave a confused nod. Naruto fell to his knees and crawled over to her. Tears now in his eyes. I already gave you a scroll. What more do you want? I'm so tired. I need to sleep. Please allow me rest. Oh, okay, said Hinata. Naruto was off the ground in a blink. Well then, as I said, I'm off, said Naruto. A few rules. 1. You train every day in this period. As a new genin, your sensei should let you off at about noon. That is when you will meet me here. 2. Train in this on your own if I cannot help you. 3. You tell no one. Even my father? She asked. Naruto gave her a shocked look. Especially your father, he shouted. Well, now that's it. He left the way he came down the path. Hinata just stared at his retreating form. She could see from there he was drinking sake. What have I gotten myself into? She asked herself and went home. Home was not one of the kindest places for Hinata. She was the weakest in her clan, but also at Air. On a good note, many of the branch members were nice to her, but that was as far as it went. She was a failure in her father's eyes, but at the end of the day she was happy. Truth was, it wasn't really a bad life for her. She was never abused except in training, and that was due to her own self-confidence. She looked at the scroll gripped in her hand. A chance to be stronger, she said to herself. She walked down the halls of her mansion towards her room. She bumped into her sister as she came around the corner. She looked at Hanabi and saw her eyes narrow. It was no secret to Hinata that Hanabi hated her. Truth was, it was probably the only thing that made her sad. She unconsciously gripped the scroll in her hands tighter and walked into her room, closing her door. She was up most of the night studying. Naruto woke up with his head pounding. What did I do last night? He thought. He slowly rose from his bed to greet the day. His apartment, to say the least, was huge. Nobody lived in the building, so Naruto knocked out the walls to all the different apartments in the building and joined them together. His eyes were heavy as his feet walked across the cold floorboards. He sneezed a few times. It was obviously cold in his apartment. He walked into his bathroom and took a hot shower, something that instantly woke him up. He walked over to the bathroom mirror and began to brush his teeth. As he was brushing, he noticed something in the mirror. On his right shoulder there was some kind of red mark. He washed out his mouth, then looked down at his shoulder. His eyes widened in horror. On his shoulder was a red heart-shaped tattoo. I got a tattoo, shouted Naruto as he started to cry. He looked at it again and noticed somebody's name inside it. Who the hell is Anko? Across town, a purple-haired woman, still recovering from her own hangover, was looking at the new piece of body art that now marked her arm. Who the hell is Naruto? She shouted. Naruto walked towards the ramen stand, rubbing his arm. After finding his new addition, he immediately ran to the tattoo shop and had it removed. It hurt a lot. However, he took off the bandage and found it already healing. The fox had died the day he fully merged with Naruto when he was 7. However, due to the tremendous amount of chakra now contained in his body, if he simply allowed a little to seep out of him, any wound he had would begin to heal. The day was sunny, but there was something more to it. A sense of peace was around the village. Naruto secretly wondered what it was, because something was definitely quieter. He walked into the ramen stand and got his answer. "I am Nichin, where's your dad?" he asked. "He's on that trip he goes on every 5 years or so," said I am. "He won't be back for months." Naruto had a look of absolute astonishment plastered on his face. He then looked at the sky and put his hands together. "Thank you," he said. Finally, the old man had taken a vacation and was out of his hair. No more do this or do that. He was a free man. He could sleep in the kitchen without rudely being woken up. I am just looked at him, and her face fell. "Naruto, you and me are now in charge of the stand. You'll have to work twice as hard," she said. And any peace that seemed to have been in the day shattered before Naruto's eyes. "No," he said in a depressed voice. He crawled up in a corner and started to cry. "Is this revenge, old man? You had this plan from the beginning, didn't you?" "No sulking!" shouted Ayam as she slapped him over the head with a frying pan. Naruto now had a large bump growing on his head. He looked up at the girl who had done it and saw an image of her father overlap her. "Nuh!" screamed Naruto as he began throwing random objects at her to keep her away. Stay back, comedic tears were streaming down his face. Ayam stared blankly at him, and then at the mess he was creating. She cracked her knuckles. "Naruto," she said as she drew closer. Naruto just continued screaming. The ladies that came to the stand just couldn't figure it out. Instead of the extremely attractive lazy ramen chef that would always hit on them, there was this hard-working young man who looked like his face had been trampled by horses. Naruto spun some noodles out, grumbling. "She didn't have to be so rough," he said as he put more ice in an ice pack on his head. Due to his healing factor, the bruises and bumps were already going away. He looked over at Ayam, who was giving a customer his order with a smile. "Thank you for coming to Ichiraka's Ramen," she said with a bow. "Conniving, manipulative demon," Naruto mumbled. He looked at the sake that was just behind her. Her back was turned so she couldn't possibly know. He slowly stalked over to it. His hand reaching out, he was only inches away. "Touch that sake, Naruto-kun, and you're dead," said Ayam in a cheerful voice. Naruto looked over at her, and saw her back was still turned. Even though he couldn't see her face, he could tell it still had that same smile it had when she gave the ramen to the customer. That smile combined with the cheery tone she was using scared the crap out of Naruto. She was like one of those killers that you saw in horror films that paid no mind to what they just did. "Yes, sir, don't kill me," said Naruto, instantly going back to work. The day dragged on and Naruto couldn't help but feel he was forgetting something. He worked even harder, but still that feeling wouldn't go away. And then it hit him. Naruto hung his head low. "Ah, crap," he said. He slowly walked over to Ayam, who was still at the counter. "I am Nichin," he said in a voice that sounded like an upset 5-year-old. She immediately turned and looked at him. "What?" she asked. "There's really something important that I got to do today. Actually, I practically got to do it every day. You can cut my pay, but I need to get out of here," said Naruto, not meeting her eyes. "This isn't some trick and you're gonna leave and just get drunk, are you?" she asked, promising doom if he was. Naruto shook his head back and forth at a wild pace. "All right, then you may go." "Yada!" shouted out Naruto, and with that he ran out the door. Ayam was instantly regretting her decision. Hinata was a very patient person, but even she had her limits. "I know he said he wouldn't always come, but this is the first day," she thought. She then began wondering if this was all a big mistake and that the man was just playing with her. But then she saw it, a figure leaving a trail of dust in his wake as he ran towards her area. "Sorry!" could be heard from the distance. He arrived with an abrupt stop, which kicked up a lot of dust. Hinata began to cough. It's okay, I wasn't waiting too long," she said. Naruto began scratching his head. His straw hat was on his back, attached to his neck by a string. He basically wore what he had the day before, except the orange button-up over shirt seemed even bigger and looser. "Alright, let's see where to begin." Naruto sat down and folded his legs and began to think. "I know I want you to go through all your taijutsu steps." He brought his straw hat over his head so it covered his eyes. Hinata nodded and got into her stance, and she practiced. She went through all the stances. When she was done, she looked over at Naruto for a sign to stop. He showed none, so she continued. She did this for hours, waiting patiently for Naruto to give her the okay to stop so he could help her with her form, but it never came. She practiced at a constant speed, wearing out by the second. Finally, she became too tired and collapsed. "I can't continue now, Naruto-sensei," she said. She looked up at her sensei, and he sat there unmoving. Then Hinata heard it. It was the sound of snoring. Hinata's mouth dropped open in shock. Was he asleep this entire time? Did he even study what I was doing? Hinata found herself becoming slightly angry, but she let it go. She was too kind to ever really get angry. Naruto's head fell forward and he woke up. That was very good, now let's see what else should you do. He got in the thinking position again. Hinata watched as he sat there for what seemed like hours, but it was actually about 30 minutes before Hinata decided to say something. Excuse me, but maybe I can show you what I learned from the SS scroll, she said. Naruto looked at her with a dark face, but it instantly brightened up as he put on a goofy grin. That's a great idea, he shouted, holding up 2 fans with the word great on them. Oh, okay, here I go, she stuttered. She turned slightly to concentrate, and she began to form seals. Naruto watched as green chakra encased her left hand. Naruto studied her as she was concentrating. Because she is a Hyuga, she has amazing control. Her only problem is self-confidence. She basically will let people walk all over her, thought Naruto. Hinata cut herself with a kunai, and then put her glowing hand over it. It then began to seal up, leaving unmarked skin in its place. Hinata looked over at her teacher to see what he thought. Her eyes widened slightly as she looked at him. Loud snores erupted from where he sat. Is he sleeping again? She said to herself. She crawled over to him and poked him. Excuse me, Naruto-sensei. He just continued to snore away. Hinata just stared at him before a small tinge of anger formed in her stomach, but it was quickly doused by her own sadness. I just put him to sleep, am I that hopeless? She asked herself. She then thought of last night when she bumped into her sister. No, I need to be stronger. At that point Naruto seemed to wake up. Oh, that was a nice nap. Now let's see your jutsu, said Naruto. Go Gomen, bu, but I already did teach the J-jutsu ca, can I have another scroll? She asked. Naruto just stared at her but smiled. Alright, here you go, he said, throwing her another scroll. He then got up and walked over to a tree. Excuse me, but where are you going? She asked. Me? Said Naruto, pointing at himself. I'm going over to this tree to plan out your training. Don't bother me until you complete that scroll though. She nodded and opened the scroll. Naruto walked over the tree and brought his straw hat up over the back of his head. Hinata stared at the scroll in shock. Chikatsu Seze no Jutsu, a very advanced healing technique. This jutsu uses a part of the patient's body as a medium to heal their wounds. It requires an almost room-wide seal, and a lot of time. Hinata read on about the jutsu, the seals required, as well as the design that was supposed to be painted on the floor. It was incredibly advanced. It talked about stuff she didn't even know yet. How am I supposed to do this? I just learned how to heal small cuts and now I'm supposed to know how to use mediums, she thought. She looked over at her new sensei. He had his back to her, and his straw hat covered the back of his head. His posture made him look like he was in deep concentration. He said not to bother him until I finish this scroll, and he looks like he is walking hard in deep concentration right now. I shouldn't bother him. Maybe I'm looking at this all wrong, she thought as she looked back at the scroll. Hinata was there for hours simply trying to manipulate her chakra in the correct fashion. But it was hopeless. She had no clue how to use mediums, or make painted seals. She looked over at her sensei again. He remained in place unmoving. I need help, surely he'll understand. She walked over to his still form and stopped a couple of feet from his back. Gomen, and now Naruto-sensei, but I can't figure out this S-scroll. Can you help me? She said. Naruto sat completely still, not moving. At first Hinata thought she had made him angry, but then another thought came into her head. Is it possible that he's sleeping again? At the idea of this, that same anger returned. This time it stayed for quite some time, but once again she let it go. He may not be asleep. She walked up in front of him, and what she saw was 1,000 times worse. He wasn't even there. A dummy had been dressed up like him and put where he was. The straw hat had covered the back of his head so she couldn't see the wood. Now this time the anger came and it didn't leave. She activated her bloodline and ran towards the village to look for him. Hooray for Naruto-sama! Shouted out a few drunk jounin, one of them being Kakashi. Naruto stood in front of them holding his sake bottle high. His face slightly flushed. They were currently all at Ichiraku's ramen stand drinking. That's right boys, drinks are on me, he shouted. Was currently out on errands and had closed up shop, but Naruto had reopened it for Kakashi and his buddies. Naruto took another long swig of his sake and let out a pleased sigh. This has been such a rough day for me, said Naruto. Hinata walked into the stand just in time to hear him say that. Her anger was amplified tenfold. Everyone in the room felt the killing intent and turned to see Hinata. Pissed could not even come close to describing the way she looked. Naruto smirked on the inside. Let's see what you do. Hinata clenched her fists. Her eyes shadowed by her hair, and her body trembled with anger. You, she said? You, what the hell is wrong with you? Naruto looked at her confused. What do you mean, Hinata-chan? I did all I could for you, said Naruto. Hinata glared daggers at him. You didn't train me at all, she shouted. All you did was sleep, you didn't help me or even try to. You came to me, remember, you came to me saying you would help and yet you did nothing. And then I come here and find you saying you've had a tough day. You are nothing but a worthless good-for-nothing drunk and a lousy teacher. Hinata finished her shouting and began to pant heavily. She stared at the ramen chef who had a surprised look on his face. He seemed to look hurt for a second, and Hinata regretted some of her words. But then just like that he smiled a true smile that made Hinata feel happy for some reason. He walked over to her and patted her on the back. Good job, said Naruto, his smile never leaving his face. Hinata had a confused look on. I don't understand, aren't you mad that I said you were a lousy teacher? Asked Hinata. Hinata-chan, there is more to teaching someone than how to throw a punch or blast off a jutsu, said Naruto. Hinata just continued to stare at him in confusion. It felt good, right, to let it all out, and not let someone walk all over you. Hinata nodded. Yeah, but Hinata was cut off as he began to speak again. Hinata-chan, before I can teach you to save someone's life you have to learn to live your own, he said. Hinata stared at him in a whole new light. When he had said those words he had seemed much older and wiser. However, all serious vanished as he put on a goofy drunken smile. Now I'm not saying blow up at people like that ever again, just stick up for yourself, he said, laughing. From now on I will take your training seriously, you have good style, but as I'm sure you know, you lack confidence, which holds you back. We're going to fix that. And with that he shooed her out of the ramen stand towards her home. When she left, Naruto turned around and faced all the jounin. What are you doing, guys? Let's continue to party, shouted out Naruto, drinking more sake. The men gave a cheer and continued as well. However, that didn't last long as Naruto felt another killer intent behind him, this one 1,000 times worse than Hinata's. Naruto slowly turned around to see the presence of a demon. Oh hey, I am Michin, what's up? Naruto was smacked so hard with the frying pan that everyone present felt it, and soon after they quickly ran for their lives. The smell of decay was heavy in the air. Smoke and blood flew into the sky surrounding the battlefield. Bodies littered everywhere, all dead, except for one lone figure. He stood around the bodies, blood coating his hands and form. His eyes were angry with electric blue. He turned around and saw another form standing. He took a step back at the appearance of a 5-year-old girl. Her eyes were placed in eternal shadow, and her mouth was set in a frown. Monster, she said. Tears swept down her cheeks, and suddenly the world seemed blank for the figure. Naruto slowly opened his eyes to his dark bedroom. He rose from the covers at a slower than normal pace. He placed his feet on the cold floorboards and got up. He moved past all the objects in the darkness with practiced ease and made his way towards the kitchen. His eyelids looked heavy as he poured himself a glass of sake and drank. He drank until he was ready to pass out into a dreamless sleep. Just like he did every night. Naruto opened his eyes groggily. His head was pounding with a massive hangover. He looked around the apartment and noticed it wasn't his. He moved his foot in the bed and found another foot in it. He then became aware of the situation he was in when he realized he wasn't wearing any clothes. Naruto slowly began to turn his head towards his companion, silently praying. Please say it's a girl, please say it's a girl, he chanted in his head. He finally laid eyes on her. She was definitely attractive, the sheets folded nicely on her curves. Safe, shouted Naruto, getting out of the bed holding out 2 fans that said the word safe on them. He looked at the clock and noticed that it was just before opening time for Ichiraku's. He quickly got dressed and exited through the window, and made his way towards the ramen stand. He was down the street towards his destination in a matter of seconds. As he drew closer, the sight of bright pink hair came into his eyes. Sakura stood outside the ramen stand her sensei had said to meet at. Her teammates weren't even there yet, in fact the place wasn't even open. Sakura let out a sigh. Her teammates had caught on to the fact that Kakashi was always late and probably wouldn't be there for a while. She looked at the closed-up setup of the stand and her mind wandered to what she was doing. She was by far the weakest on her team, and didn't have a clue on how to get stronger. She thought back to the words of her sensei. Flashback. Sakura stood at the bridge with her teammates. Kakashi was currently giving them the go-ahead to leave. They had been doing D-rank missions for about a week now. Well, that's it, you're dismissed, said Kakashi. They all began to leave. One moment, Sakura. The young pink-haired girl turned to her sensei with a curious look. Kakashi let out a sigh, as he seemed to be debating something within himself. Sakura could only wonder what. Sakura, how serious are you about being a shinobi? Asked Kakashi. Sakura took a step back in surprise at this. What do you mean, sensei? Asked Sakura. However, deep down she knew. Sakura, I'm sorry, but your performance as a shinobi is sad, said Kakashi, trying to be as nice about it as possible. You have made little contribution to your team in missions, and your actual skill level is below average. Kakashi saw the sadness gather behind the girl's eyes but continued on. This had to be said. Your control is good, but that is only because you have less than an average Kenichi. But your biggest problem is your lack of focus. You're always looking towards the Uchiha to see what he will do. His words hurt, but Sakura knew they were true. Holding back her feelings, she asked, What should I do? Kakashi closed his visible eye and seemed to be enveloped by deep thought. You need some ramen, said Kakashi. Sakura's sweat dropped. Not just you, but the rest of the team. From now on, our new meeting spot will be a place called the Chirakus. Have you heard of it? Sakura nodded. The ramen stand was rather well known for its spectacular food. She had never eaten there for the simple fact that she hadn't been interested in eating ramen. Okay then, well, I'm off to tell the others, said Kakashi, disappearing in an instant. Wait, Kakashi-sensei, she shouted after him, but he was long gone. You didn't tell me how to get stronger. End of flashback. Excuse me? A boy around her age brought Sakura out of her musings. He had rather long blonde hair done in a ponytail, purple wire-framed sunglasses that seemed rather small, as they didn't fully cover his eyes, and a large straw hat. His clothing was rather loose as well as orange, but anyone with eyes could see he was well built. Do you want to get into the stand? He asked. Yes, I'm meeting my team here, said Sakura. The boy nodded. He walked over to the closed-off stand and removed a key. He unlocked the bottom latch and pulled the metal wall up. He then proceeded behind the counter into the kitchen. Now what can I get for you? He asked. Sakura looked at him with a quizzical expression, but realization dawned upon her that he was the cook. I'm sorry, but I don't really like ramen. The boy looked a little surprised but then gave a small chuckle. Then you haven't tried my cooking, he said. He was done in seconds. Sakura was beyond surprised at that. The food now in front of her definitely looked delicious. I'm sorry, but I don't have money, she said. No, the first one is free, said the boy. Sakura looked hesitant at first but took a bite and couldn't stop. The food was like heaven in her mouth. Its flavor just seemed to melt perfectly into her taste buds. To her surprise, she was finished rather quickly. Uzumaki Naruto, greatest ramen chef, never fails to please, he shouted. You won't find a better miso or any ramen for that matter. Thank you, it was very good, said Sakura. No problem, said Naruto. So you're waiting for your team, right? Sakura nodded at this. Yes, Kakashi-sensei says we'll meet here every morning from now on. Oh, so you're Kakashi's student, said Naruto. Yes, do you know him? Yeah, you could say that me and him go way back, said Naruto with a faraway look in his eyes. Have another ramen bowl, I'll add it to Kakashi's tab. He placed another bowl in front of her, and she bowed her head in thanks and began eating. Naruto looked at her as she enjoyed the food. A perverted blush came onto his face. Sure, the pink hair is kind of weird, but she's definitely developing nice, I'd say a B cup at least. She stopped eating and looked at him, and where his eyes were. Her eyebrow twitched. And what, may I ask, are you looking at? She said. Naruto blinked and then composed himself. Sorry, I just like watching people enjoy my cooking, he lied. Her eyebrow lowered and she seemed to relax. Oh, all right, she said. Naruto smirked on the inside and let out a small sigh. That was close, he whispered to himself. So mind if I ask what is bothering you? Sakura stopped eating and looked up at the boy. She looked rather surprised at his statement. And may I ask why you think something is bothering me? She asked. Naruto put his elbow on the counter and leaned forward. When I first saw you, you had a faraway look in your eyes, he said smoothly. Sakura didn't know why, but the way he said that line made her blush slightly. It almost sounded poetic. However, she understood what he was asking. Well, you see, as a shinobi, she appeared to be in deep conflict with herself as she tried to speak. I'm a failure. Naruto looked a little surprised but quickly covered it up with a neutral expression. What the hell has Kakashi been doing to her? Were his thoughts. Care to explain? He asked. In the academy, I was always really good with all the written stuff, she said. I studied and got A's on my tests. I memorized the entire shinobi code word for word, and I even know almost the entire history of Konoha. Naruto looked at her thoughtfully, understanding where she was going with this. Because of all this, I was second highest kanji in my grade level. I thought that meant I was a good shinobi, but you got a taste of what you really have to do, Naruto finished. She looked up at him a little surprised. Those things that you studied so hard at are technically useless in field. Sakura looked downcast at that. In combat, knowing which Hokage discovered the village or what number 23 is in the code isn't going to help you, but it's not your fault, he said. She looked back up to him confused. What do you mean? It's the fault of the academy, he said. Basing one's ranking and status upon how well you did on the academic level is not only useless but cause for concern. They told you were doing fine, so you never had reason to aim for something else. But still, that stuff is important, isn't it? Like the understanding of chakra? She asked. Understanding chakra and using it to a degree that is effective are different things, said Naruto. Even if you understand and are still able to control it well, it won't make a difference if you don't have enough to do any jutsu. So what should I do? She said, staring at the boy who seemed so wise. How the hell should I know? He said while picking his nose. Sakura's sweat dropped at this. What do you mean, how the hell should I know? She shouted. You were an expert a minute ago. What do you expect? I'm a ramen chef, not a ninja, he said flatly, taking out a bottle and taking a sip from it. I just said what seemed right based on what you said. That doesn't mean that I was correct in my assumptions. Sakura sighed and looked down. So this guy's useless. Yeah, this sucks, said inner Sakura. However, it doesn't mean I was wrong either. Sakura considered his words for a minute. Well then, based on what you heard, what do you think I should do? She asked. No clue, he said with a smile, once again shutting her down. Sakura nearly fell and was on the verge of comedic tears. However, one thing doesn't make sense about what you told me. Sakura had her head on the counter. She wasn't even sure if she should listen to the chef anymore. Yeah, and what's that? She said with little hope that whatever he would say was worth it. Why didn't you train at all? He asked. Sakura looked up at him confused. I mean, I understand you were studying, but that couldn't have taken up all your time, so like what were you doing? Sakura blushed as she thought about it. She hadn't been training at all. Those times when she had free time, she just stalked the Uchiha with the rest of the girls. The words of her sensei came back to her at that moment. Your biggest problem is that you lack focus. His words rung in her head. She had studied so hard so that she could be a good student and not be a brain-dead moron. However, when it came time for physical work, she just watched Sasuke. Well, you see, I was watching this boy I like, she said, blushing. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You see, every girl in my year has a crush on Sasuke, and well, I was always with them trying to get a date. Naruto looked slightly confused. Why did the idea of him dating you seem to excite you? He asked. If it's romance you want, then here. He took out a small orange book and Sakura instantly recognized it as he handed it to her. She was twitching slightly and was about to slam it in his face when she saw his serious look. Instead of stalking Sasuke, train during that time, and since you seem to want that whole romance thing, read this at night before you go to sleep, he said. She looked very confused but decided what could hurt in trying it. Okay, thank you, she said. You might want to leave and go do something physical for a while, said Naruto. Kakashi probably won't be here for another couple of hours. A vein grew in Sakura's head at hearing this, and she left muttering something about late senseis. As the pink-haired girl left, Ayam walked in. So we had a customer this early, huh? She asked. Naruto nodded. She then stared at him with a look of annoyance. Yeah, right. Naruto looked very confused at this. What do you mean? You were fooling around with her, weren't you? She shouted. Wah! Naruto's mouth dropped open and he started to shake his head viciously back and forth. No, all we did was talk, I swear. Ayam looked at him unbelieving. Well, anyways, get to work, she said. Naruto then shook his head. Sorry, I need to leave early as in right now. Ayam stared at him in disbelief. You're kidding, right? It wasn't a question, it was a statement. At that moment, Naruto ran out of there full speed. Naruto! Was heard from behind him. Naruto landed in the training field where a certain Hyuga girl was waiting. Her sensei Kurenai was currently out on a mission, giving them the day off. "Welcome, Naruto-sensei," she said in a quiet voice. Even though she didn't stutter anymore, she was still incredibly shy. But that's why Naruto was grinning. "Here," he said, handing out his second copy of the day to the young girl. What is it?" she asked, confused at the picture on the front of the book. "A perverted adult novel," said Naruto. Hinata's jaw nearly fell out of its socket. "I got the idea only moments ago when I helped a girl learn to focus on something else." Hinata didn't even want to know the circumstances that would give Naruto an idea like this while he was apparently helping out another girl. "I want you to read a chapter at least once a week. I'll know if you did because I will be quizzing you and I've memorized every sentence in that book," said Naruto. Hinata looked absolutely horrified at this. But how will this help?" She all but shouted the last word. Naruto sighed and began removing his shirt. Hinata blushed up like a tomato and screamed at him. "What are you doing?" "That's why I want you to read that book," said Naruto, buttoning up his shirt. "You're too shy about situations like this and you're 15, you should be fine with a guy simply removing his shirt." Hinata nodded, looking down at the orange book in her hands, blushing insanely. Naruto went over by a tree and went to sleep, even though he should have been going back to work since he had taught Hinata the only lesson he would for the day. He didn't think at all about the fact that he had just given Hinata a perverted novel. But then again, he could never have imagined the consequences to what he had just done. "Seems like a good spot to end it, not? Prepare yourself, there is still a long ways to go, for this is my extremely large chapter." Naruto awoke several hours later from his sleep. He looked around the training field and took note that Hinata was not there. He stared up at the sun and decided that he probably should be heading back to work. He strolled down the wide streets that were Konoha. His blue eyes set themselves on a very sealed up and closed Ichirakas. What the hell, he thought. Naruto wandered up to the metal wall that blocked off the entrance to his life. A small piece of paper was taped to the front of it. "Dear asshole. Due to your sudden disappearance, I was unable to prepare myself for proper working conditions. There were so many customers that I couldn't handle them. A lot of customers may not be an accurate description, so I'll tell you about it. I got people at first that were coming in for a late breakfast. It didn't start out so bad, but as I was filling those orders and preparing them, the early lunch group came in. It was a little hard, but I finally managed to get all the orders of the late breakfast group and immediately started taking orders from the early lunch group. And then it happened, I got the normal lunch group, and being that the lunchtime rush is our biggest part of the day, it was increasingly hard. I was still cooking and serving the late breakfast group. I was starting and still taking orders from the early lunch group, and the lunch group being as big as it is swarmed the place. Complaints, requests, you name it, they all swamped me. Most of them got pissed and started fighting the early lunch group for their ramen. Tears were shed, ramen was spilt, and for the most part the whole store was trashed, and I was forced to close down. I then spent several hours cleaning up the mess, hoping, praying that you would come back to help, but alas, you didn't. The point of this being that this entire incident was in fact completely your fault. You are a good-for-nothing son of a bye. The letter that had started out so small turned out to be many pages folded up. All of them containing the most vile words of profanity, as well as graphic descriptions of how he was going to be tortured. Naruto took off his purple wire-framed sunglasses and put his forearm over his eyes. He then began to rather pathetically cry. "I'm Naruto." Naruto turned his head and looked at the form of Kakashi. Behind him was Sakura and what he could only assume was her teammates. "Is everything all right? Are you closed?" he asked. No, Kakashi-san, not at all," he said, stepping right in front of him with a mischievous smile on his face. He was currently holding his hands together and rubbing them as if delighted by something. All sadness and trace of tears were now gone, replaced with a mask of joy that was clearly covering up whatever the blonde was now scheming. "Come right in." Naruto lifted the metal doors and opened up shop. Naruto had to give Ayam one thing: she was damn good at cleaning up. She had said in her letter that the place was trashed, yet now it looked almost brand new. Naruto walked around the counter and started up the stove. "Okay, so what would you like?" said Naruto, turning to them. "I'll have the large miso," said Kakashi with a smile. "The same," said Sakura. Naruto then turned his attention to the boy with the jet black hair. "Uchiha Sasuke," thought Naruto. "I don't like ramen," said Sasuke. "One beef coming up," said Naruto. Sasuke's eyes widened a little at this, and he was about to cancel the order when Kakashi gave him a warning glance. And before he knew it, he had a medium-sized bowl of ramen in front of him. He looked at the bowl and had to admit it looked very delectable. The aroma filled his nostrils and he finally decided to take a bite. He wasn't disappointed. Naruto then placed another bowl in front of Hanabi. Her face remained stony, and the only sign of a reaction was a raised eyebrow that only rose about 5 or so millimeters. I do not believe I placed an order. However, she went ignored as Naruto was talking with her sensei. So Kakashi, who's the Hyuga midget? Asked Naruto. Hanabi's eyebrow twitched for only a second before she regained control of her emotions. That Naruto is Hyuga Hanabi, the prodigy, and she's not a midget, she's only 12. She was the #1 Konichi in the academy even with being several years younger, said Kakashi. Naruto looked over at the young girl. She kept on a stony expression, but a flicker of amusement went through her eyes. When people found out she was a prodigy, they tended to ogle at her for a while. It had definitely done so when the Hyuga elders had seen her progress. She allowed only the smallest of smirks to invade over her expressionless face. Naruto suddenly jumped up and sat on the counter with his legs crossed directly in front of Hanabi. He had a look of boredom on his face as he brought himself to eye level with the young genius. Hanabi was a little surprised at how close he was. His face, even though it looked bored, also showed a hint of annoyance. Before she could react, a finger flicked her nose. Baka, said Naruto. Hanabi brought her hand up and covered her nose. Her stony face finally took on an emotion of surprise and a hint of anger. What was that for? She said, slightly raising her voice. Her face was red with a small bit of anger. Baka, said Naruto again, raising voice above hers. He swatted the top of her head with the tip of a folded-up fan that he seemed to have gotten out of nowhere. What are they doing letting a child like you be a shinobi? He looked at her with a confused and annoyed face. I am no child, I am a shinobi of the leaf, said Hanabi, regaining some of her previous control. Despite my age, I am more than qualified to. Baka, said Naruto again. This time he flicked her on the forehead with his finger. It annoyed her that for some reason she was unable to stop it. You're very weird, you look like a small kid, yet you talk as if you are a 50-year-old lady. Hanabi's face was slowly beginning to flush with anger. Her teammates stared at the scene with their jaws dropped, while their sensei was wearing a smile in amusement. When I care about the opinion of a civilian, she said the word as if it was scum. I'll let you know. Naruto was completely unaffected by her attempts to insult him. He sat there paying minor attention to her words as he drank from a bottle of sake. Hanabi was growing increasingly annoyed at the chef as he ignored her while drinking something from a bottle. Baka, he said again, flicking her in the nose. It was pissing her off greatly that she had failed again to stop it. You're not much of a shinobi, are you? Your sister Hinata is way better. Her gaze grew extremely cold as she glared at him, barely suppressing her rage. And what, may I ask, is better about my pathetic sister? She said with a tone of superiority. Her anger was in her eyes, but she held a confident smirk on her face at the thought of her waste of a life sister. Well, her boobs are bigger for one. And any confidence, or emotionless mask that she had on her face shattered. Her jaw dropped to the counter, and she was shaking with fury. What does that have to do with anything? She shouted in anger. But Naruto ignored her as he began to recite a list. She's nicer and much more pleasant to talk to, she isn't a 12-year-old midget with the personality of a 50-year-old. Hanabi's face was absolutely red with anger as she stood up. As if scum like you would know anything about superiority. My sister is a weak waste of a life that doesn't deserve the Hyuga name, she shouted. I dare not stay in this filth you call a restaurant any longer. She stormed away from her seat towards the exit. Meet us here tomorrow, said Kakashi, and Hanabi threw an accusing glare at him. Both of the Hyuga's teammates sat at the counter in shock, their mouths hung open. Even the emotionless Sasuke looked moronic in the prospect of what he had just seen. They both looked at the chef in unison, eyes wide and blank white. I'll look at that, what a waste, she didn't even touch her ramen, said Naruto as he began to eat it. The two genin fell to the floor at that. Kakashi just gave an amused chuckle. Well, now I think we'll be leaving, said Kakashi, taking out his wallet to pay the bill. He then noticed the price being charged for each bowl. This is 3 times what it normally costs. And suddenly Kakashi grew aware at what the mischievous look Naruto had during the beginning of the meal. He left with a down look. Ayame had arrived a few hours later, and before she could beat the crap out of Naruto, he showed her all the money he had made. He was let off with only 2 black eyes and a bump on the head. Well, despite that I had to close, I was still able to take care of business, she said. Naruto looked at her curiously. One of our suppliers has agreed to meet us halfway in the delivery. I've already asked the Hokage to assign you protection. You leave in a couple days. Naruto looked positively appalled at the idea of moving his lazy bum around and traveling. How far is halfway? He asked in fear. Wave Country, she said. Team 7 met at the ramen stand over the next few days. Each time Hanabi grew to hate the place even more. Naruto always succeeded in making her very angry, and she failed in every attempt to insult him. He always gave a lazy yawn or took a sip from his sake bottle. All which told Hanabi that he wasn't paying attention to her. The team made their way towards the Hokage Tower to receive the next mission. Hanabi was mumbling in anger having just come from the ramen stand. Her teammates actually enjoyed the response she was giving. She was always cold, emotionless, and above all arrogant. Granted, she was very good for a genin, heck even for most chunin. However, her outburst and anger proved to her team that she was human, and they enjoyed the fact Naruto always brought her down a peg or two. Naruto was always very nice to Sakura and made her laugh with his foolishness or laziness. Surprisingly, he was rather nice to Sasuke as well, despite the fact that he was almost as arrogant as Hanabi was. Sasuke still never smiled, but he didn't give Naruto the cold shoulder. He admitted that his food was amazing and always ate it with silent thanks. They never learned anything really about Naruto except that he loved sake and was more often drunk when they saw him. Apparently he and Kakashi had a history, something they didn't pry into. Sasuke and Sakura out of respect, and Hanabi for, in her words, I don't give a damn about anything that involves that chef. Team 7 was now standing before the Hokage and their Chunin teacher Irika. Due to your impressive mission record thus far, it has been decided to give Team 7 a C-rank mission, said the Hokage. Originally this mission would have involved you only protecting a bridge builder, however a chef is in need of supplies and will be accompanying you to Wave. Your mission involves that you protect him as well. Hanabi looked absolutely terrified. A chef it couldn't be. She turned as the doors to the room opened. She stared out at the distance as the figure came closer. His silhouette showed that he had a straw hat and a sake bottle in hand. Hanabi was paling in annoyance. However, as the figure emerged from the shadows, she was greeted with the sight of an old man. She let out a sigh of relief. I'm Tazuna the bridge builder, he said. Hanabi's eyes shot open to extremely wide. Wait, if he's the bridge builder, then where's the Che? At that moment a boy with blonde hair, a straw hat, loose clothing, and purple wire-framed sunglasses walked in. Hope I'm not late, said Naruto. So where are the shinobi that will be protecting me and this bridge builder? I was just about to ask that question myself, said Tazuna looking at the Hokage. The old man pointed to Team 7. Kids? The bridge builder said, confused. Naruto and him looked at each other, then they looked back at their bodyguards. Naruto grabbed the sake bottle from Tazuna's hand and took a long swig. Tazuna paid little mind to the fact that he was drinking when he was only 15. All he said was, my thoughts exactly, before he took a long swig of his own. Naruto and Bridge Builder made their way down the road with Team 7 surrounding them as guards. Naruto was currently very drunk at the time. That there is some good stuff, slurred Naruto. I'm a little surprised someone your age can appreciate it, said Tazuna, only a little tipsy. That there is the finest the wave has to offer. Oh, I see, very nicey, said Naruto. The group was a good distance away from Konoha. In a couple of hours they would most likely be upon the boat that would take them to Wave Country. Naruto laughed at a joke he remembered. However, to the people around him he looked rather crazy to just start laughing. They came across a puddle that Kakashi seemed to eye for a few seconds before they moved on. As they drew farther away, two figures rose from the puddle. They charged the group from behind, preparing to strike. One of them aimed their poison-covered claw for the blonde with the straw hat. He thrust his attack outward just as Kakashi and his team turned around to notice their attackers. However, before anything could happen, Naruto tripped and fell forward. The blow missed his head, but the stunt didn't end there. Naruto's foot was brought behind him as he was falling off balance, and he just happened to kick the clueless missing Nin in a very sensitive area. Naruto got up and turned around. Hey! He shouted much louder than he needed to the person directly in front of him on his knees holding his crotch. Are you the one who tripped me? Before the Nin could respond, Naruto broke a sake bottle over his head, effectively knocking him out. The man's comrade then charged at the bridge builder, obviously to try and accomplish his mission. However, Sasuke intercepted him. Sasuke kicked him hard in the chin, sending him flying up in the air. Hanabi appeared in a flash directly above him. She closed several tensic points on his body with lightning speed before she sent a powerful palm thrust to his chest. He was sent hurtling towards the ground at breakneck speed when Sakura came up from underneath him. She threw her fist in his back, effectively knocking him out. Clapping was heard coming from Kakashi's direction as he walked towards his team. Very good, I didn't even need to intervene, said Kakashi with a smile. Sakura, well done. She beamed at the compliment, knowing this was the true first time she actively did something useful in a mission. Kakashi then looked over at Naruto, who was now crying at breaking his sake bottle on the nin's head. Very subtle, Naruto, thought Kakashi. Kakashi knew that even in a drunken stupor Naruto was very effective. He sometimes speculated that the blonde didn't even really feel the effects of the alcohol that he consumed, but then again he was a master of the Druken fist. Well, I think you need to explain, said Kakashi to the bridge builder. What do you mean? Said Tazuna, beginning to sweat. That last Nin, instead of dealing with the threat that was us, he targeted you with the intention to kill, said the copy Nin. This signifies that you were the target all along. Tazuna looked down. This is a C-ranked mission, we aren't trained for shinobi fights yet, said Sakura. I believe we should head back, said Kakashi. Please try and understand we can't afford any mission higher than a C-ranked. I need protection. I promise you that if you guard me till I complete the bridge, I'll pay you the proper amount. Tazuna got on his knees and was now begging. I'm sorry, but I'm canceling this mission. My team is not ready for such a. Now wait a goddamn minute, shouted out a drunk Naruto now over the loss of his sake. I paid good money for this mission, and I expect an escort now so I can make it on time to get the supplies. But Naruto, just let us take him back to the village, and then we'll be on our way with you, said Kakashi, trying to be reasonable. Hell no, that will take way too long, I need those ingredients now, said Naruto. As if the opinion of a drunk really matters, said Hanabi. We are not prepared to handle this, and thus should return. My midget-san, I'm surprised at you. I thought that a prodigy such as yourself wouldn't be afraid of a little challenge, said Naruto in a lazy voice that suddenly seemed very sober. Hanabi was almost boiling over at the midget comment. Look, if it's a matter of money, Ichiraku will pay for the extra cost. Now can we get going? Said Naruto. Tazuna stared wide-eyed at the chef in front of him. Words could not describe the joy he was feeling. Thank you, he mumbled. Naruto just stared at him confused. What? Who the hell are you? He shouted at Tazuna, suddenly seeming very drunk again. Everyone's sweat dropped. Very well then, said Kakashi. There is no arguing with a well-paying client, so let's go. The group sat quietly on the rocking boat. Naruto had a look that seemed off almost absolute concentration. Many of the people on board were staring at him curiously. Suddenly his face turned green and he threw up over the side of the boat. This continued for the whole trip. Both Sakura and Tazuna were by his side, patting him on the back as he tossed his lunch. There, you'll be fine, said Sakura. No, I won't, I'm going to die, said a green-faced Naruto in his tired, lazy voice. Ha, I hate the water. We're here, said the boat owner. Their small boat erupted from the mist, and they were able to see what was finished of the bridge in clear sight. It was a rather beautiful sight in the sunny day. All right, my house is only a little ways from here, said Tazuna. It should only take an hour or so. The group nodded in understanding. Tazuna had told them of his full situation on the boat ride over, of how Guato was terrorizing his country and how the bridge needed to be finished. They were walking down the road when they came to a clearing beside a lake. Sakura had thrown a kunai only to discover it was a bunny that had caused her to throw it. At that point Naruto immediately called their attention. I'm tired, let's rest here for a sake break, said Naruto. He grabbed a spare bottle that he had brought. His original he had broken on the missing Nin's head. He sat down cross-legged in the middle of the clearing with the large bottle in between his legs. He picked it up and poured it into a saucer. Naruto, I don't think there's time for. Kakashi was cut off as Naruto held up a hand. There is always time for a sake break. But always. Kakashi gave a defeated sigh and walked away. Tazuna was shuffling around nervously on his feet next to Naruto, who sat there calmly drinking from his saucer. Suddenly a whistling sound was heard in the air. Tazuna stared straight ahead, frozen in terror, as he saw a giant sword heading straight for him. His life began to flash before his eyes as his doom drew near. A hand grabbed him by the collar and pulled him down as the blade went over where his head had been. He looked to the boy who had just saved his life. Naruto had his eyes closed and was calmly sipping some sake from the saucer in his right hand, while his left had gone up and pulled Tazuna down to escape the blade. The blonde showed little acknowledgement for what had just taken place, as he sat there calmly sipping away at his sake. Tazuna wondered if he even realized that they were being attacked. Team 7 surrounded them in a triangle formation. Kakashi stood ahead of them staring at a tree where the sword was now lodged in. A large man without a shirt and had no eyebrows appeared on top of it. Sharingan Kakashi, said Zabuza with a stern look. Sasuke's eyes widened at hearing this. Zabuza, demon of the mist, said Kakashi with an equally serious look on his face as he pulled up his height from his eye showing a deep scar. Uzumaki Naruto, world's greatest ramen chef, said Naruto. All the shinobi present, even the fake hunter Nin in hiding, stared at the boy in shock. What everyone was doing it. Zabuza looked at the boy who was clearly tipsy from the sake between his lap. He then returned to the matter at hand. Allow me to kill that old man, and there will be no reason for yours or your students' blood to be shed, said Zabuza in a threatening manner. Team 7, stay out of this fight, this guy is on a whole other level, said Kakashi. Protect Tazuna and Naruto. Kakashi opened his closed lid revealing his eye and took the ready stance. Zabuza jumped onto the lake and started forming seals. Before they knew it, a mist had started to rise in the area. Tazuna was beginning to panic as he lost the ability to see. The voice of Zabuza rung through the mist as he listed off the areas he could strike. Naruto sat there calmly, happily sipping his sake. He still remained in the cross-legged position even with the presence of the insane Jounin threatening all of them. Hanabi activated her Byakugan and looked through the mist. She gave a small smirk as Zabuza appeared in her vision. Kakashi-sensei, he is still on the lake, she said. Well, one of the children can see through my mist, how interesting, said Zabuza with a smile under his bandages. However, before Hanabi could blink, he was in the center of their formation with his large sword. Zabuza let out a small chuckle in amusement. His blade was held in a completely flat horizontal angle. The base was by Naruto's neck and the tip was pressing on the abdomen of the bridge builder. Naruto took another calm sip from his saucer. He then did something that surprised the now tense shinobi of the area. He placed the saucer on the flat of the sword. Thanks for that, I needed a table while I open up this bottle, said Naruto, using both his hands to open up the sake container. If Zabuza had an eyebrow, it would be twitching. However, he let up an amused sigh. I must say, brat, you're rather calm, much more so than your friends here, said Zabuza, pointing to the genin now standing around them. They were all frozen in fear, even Hanabi. It was clear that they were trying to shake it off with all they had, but the amount of killing intent that Zabuza seemed to radiate as if it was as common as breathing was far too much. I would think a mere 15-year-old chef would be in tears right now begging for mercy, but then again perhaps you're too drunk right now to worry, said Zabuza. Worry? Said Naruto with a clueless expression. Why would I worry when Kakashi-san is right there? As this was said, Zabuza burst into water as Kakashi cut its throat with a kunai. Zabuza appeared behind him and slashed, but Kakashi burst into water as well. Kakashi lunged his kunai at Zabuza, which the Mizujounin effectively blocked. However, he was then kicked away back towards the lake by a well-placed blow from Kakashi. Kakashi now stood in front of his charges, forming one seal. The mist in the area thinned considerably, allowing all to see the battle that was about to take place. Naruto picked up his saucer that had fallen from the sword when Zabuza had moved. He checked to see if it was clean. When he found it was, he smiled and poured his favorite liquid into the saucer. He took a sip and gave a happy sigh. Ah, that hits the spot, he said happily. How can you be so calm? Said Tazuna, looking at the fight. Kakashi and Zabuza were merely blurs to his students, and Tazuna couldn't even see them. The clanging of metal was heard by all though. Aren't you worried if he fails we're all dead? I try not to think about those things, said Naruto. And besides, I have faith in Kakashi-san. As those words were said, Kakashi was trapped in a water prison. Naruto's jaw dropped. What the hell, Kakashi? Shouted out Naruto. You're making me look bad. I just told this guy here not to worry because you were fighting and you go get yourself caught. Kakashi's sweat dropped in his prison. Sorry, he mumbled. Zabuza just let out a laugh at this. The demon of the mist formed a few sets of one-handed seals, a feat that stunned the genin present. A water clone formed and began to walk towards them, its large sword raised. When it came upon land, the genins took action. Sasuke charged forward and delivered a punch towards the face. Sakura was running behind him. The clone effortlessly caught the attack, and before Sakura could launch her attack, the clone whipped Sasuke at her, sending both of them to the ground. If Hanabi was surprised that her teammates were taken down so easily, it didn't show as she attacked. Even though her family style was dangerous, the Juken was blocked at every thrust by the large sword. Hanabi stared wide-eyed as her attacks were parried. So this is the difference in class between a Chunin and a Jounin. He's not even fighting and his clone is beating me with little effort. thought Hanabi. She thought of how she had dealt with the demon brother. Granted, she had help from her team, but she was positive she could have defeated him alone. Yet here was water clone Barley, 10% of its creator's power, fighting her equally. It's that damn sword, it's blocking my attacks, she thought. She was growing angry at the situation, perhaps that's what made her slip up. She was caught off guard for only a second, but that was all it took. The blade slashed through her stomach, and she skidded back. It wasn't a serious injury. She had tilted her body to avoid a fatal shot, a sign that she really was the prodigy she claimed to be. She then paused as she bent on one knee, clutching her stomach. The clone drew ever closer, and she found herself thinking of a lot of things. She thought about attacks, plans, but found herself grow with fury as the thought of her sister appeared in her head. Hinata, the one who was to be the Hyuga heiress, was beneath her. When she took over as head of the clan, Hanabi would be branded as a branch member. She knew she was more deserving of the title. She was strong, and everyone knew it. Even her father did, and yet for some reason he didn't disown Hinata. He continued to allow her to be the heiress. Hanabi had brought up the suggestion to him on more than one occasion to have her banned from the clan. Each time he would give her a cold glare and say no. That angered her even more, and she directed it to the cause of it all: her sister. She was doomed to the hell of becoming a branch member. Her skills would go unrecognized, and she would be nothing. She gathered all her fury into one blow in her open palm. She lunged it at the clone that attempted to block. However, the sword dissolved into water as the hand touched it, and soon the clone dissolved as well. There was a sound as the impact from the blow was made. The water behind the now destroyed clone wavered a little as the palm strike let out the remaining force. Hanabi panted heavily. She was a prodigy and had perfect control. She had mastered the Juken style and had a cunning mind. The only problem was her age. Being as young as she was, she didn't have large chakra reserves. She did make up for this with her control, but doing an attack like she just did left her completely drained. Zabuza gave another amused chuckle, a trait that Kakashi had taken note of and found annoying. Team 7 regrouped themselves and prepared for another attack. Zabuza's chuckle became a full-blown laughter. "So you take out one of my clones and now you feel like you've accomplished something," he said. He prepared another seal. "I can easily replace it with 10 more." He laughed even wilder and was about to form another few clones when he felt it. His body froze completely, as he was assaulted by an unreal wave of killer intent. It felt like that of a demon. His eyes searched frantically around the battlefield looking for the source. He made extra certain not to move his head, so his opponents wouldn't know he was worried about something. Zabuza looked at Team 7 as they seemed completely unaware of the unreal killer intent. That made Zabuza sweat, as it meant that the full force of killing intent was focused directly on him. At first he speculated that it was coming from one of the genin, but that thought was quickly doused as he stared at their uncertain eyes. No, his gaze looked past them to the bridge builder, who only looked deathly frightened. His eyes wandered to the chef, and it took all he had not to scream right there. The boy's straw hat shadowed his face, however his eyes remained visible. His icy blue eyes set in a killer-like position. They were the eyes of someone who had killed countless hundreds, and could swat him like a fly. The unreal killer intent came from those orbs. And Zabuza knew he would die. His body began to tremble with fear. Him, the demon of the mist, was shaking in terror. His body was sweating, his eyes were shaking, and he was coming very close to throwing up. Then the chef brought his hand to his hat and pulled it down over his eyes. At that moment Zabuza stopped trembling, realizing what had just happened. He had received a warning. The Mizujounin released his hand from the water prison and Kakashi was free. The copy mean struck and Zabuza was forced to retreat back away. Team 7 was a little confused. For some reason Zabuza seemed to have released his hand from Kakashi's prison, effectively freeing him. After that it went all downhill for Zabuza as Kakashi tricked him and played with his mind using his Sharingan. Zabuza was eventually blasted back by a jutsu he was attempting to use. Before Kakashi could land the final blow, a hunter nin showed up and killed him. He took his body with him. Kakashi then passed out from exhaustion, and his team came to carry him. They immediately headed towards the bridge builder's house. "How much longer?" said an annoyed and tired-looking Naruto. Not to be nosy or anything, but Naruto, don't you have to meet your supplier?" said Sakura. Naruto looked at her wide-eyed and then slapped his head. "Ah crap," he said. He immediately ran off for the village. "Idiot," said Hanabi, who was currently clutching her bandaged stomach. Sasuke had her arms slung over his shoulder to help her to the house. As they drew closer, a beautiful young woman exited the house and ran towards them. "Father!" she said as she gave Tazuna a hug. Tsunami, I'm back and I've got some bodyguards, said Tazuna. One of them needs a bed and another needs you to take a look at her. Her stomach was cut. It doesn't look too serious, but still. Of course, right this way, she said. Zabuza lied in a large bed bandaged up. His eyes stared up at the ceiling, and he remained unmoving. His entire body was sore, and he wanted to rest some more. The fake Hunternin sat by his side waiting. Did you discover the Sharingan's weakness? He asked. Hi, Zabuza-sama, said the Hunternin. Very good, Haku. Did you by any chance see the chef? Said Zabuza. Haku looked very confused at this. Why would I? Asked Haku. Because if that chef had fought, I would have been dead 1,000 times over, stated Zabuza. Haku's eyes widened to impossible size. I don't understand, is he a shinobi? I don't know, I didn't see his abilities or his chakra stores, but I know for a fact that he could kill me. His eyes said it all. I'll look into it. And with that, Haku blurred out of existence. Be careful, mumbled Zabuza as the boy was now fully gone. Naruto wore a happy smile on his face. He had gotten the supplies he required and now was heading back. He was coming back from the bar, which was another reason he was happy. He hiccuped a few times before he stumbled up to the doorway. It was dark in the house. Even so, Naruto was still able to navigate his way up the stairs. Being that he was currently being alcohol impaired, he didn't think much about just entering some random door to go to sleep. However, the consequences wouldn't come till morning. Ah! A feminine scream was heard through the entire house. Tsunami, what's wrong? Said Tazuna, running into the room, followed by the members of Team 7, a small boy, and a Kakashi on crutches. All of their mouths fell wide open. Tsunami was in the corner of the room, blushing madly with a confused look on her face. A sheet covered her body, and it didn't take a genius to know that she wasn't wearing anything underneath. Naruto was snoring loudly in the only bed in the room. He was dressed in nothing but his boxers, and some drool was coming out of the corner of his mouth. Both the boy and Tazuin ran up to him and grabbed his sleeping form by his neck. They then began shaking him violently. What the hell did you do to my daughter/MOM? They both shouted together. Naruto awoke abruptly, unable to breathe. He was currently being strangled to death by an old man and a 10-year-old. He only heard briefly what they said before he passed out from lack of oxygen. They threw his unconscious form on the bed and ran over to Tsunami. My beautiful daughters, are you alright? What did that no-good drunk do to you? Said Tazuna. Nothing, Dad, she said, still blushing. Then why did you scream? Asked the boy. Well, I woke up and he was sort of there, so I freaked, was her response. Then why are you naked? Asked Tazuna, pointing to the sheet covering her body. Well, you see, Dad, I sort of sleep in this. She blushed even more, not wanting to finish her sentence in front of Inari. Oh, I see, said the bridge builder. They all looked over to Naruto as he began regaining his consciousness. What the hell? Said Naruto. All the occupants of the room were staring at him angrily. All except for Tsunami, who was far too embarrassed, and Sasuke, who really didn't care about the situation. What? Asked Naruto. And what, may we ask, were you doing in Tsunami's bed? Said Kakashi. Even though he seemed as angry as the rest of the people in the room, he actually seemed more jealous than everything. I know you are a flirt and a pervert, but still. Now hold on, said Naruto. I couldn't even remember my own name last night. I was so drunk that I just crashed in the nearest bed. I didn't know someone was in there. They all looked at him, not believing his story. What, it's the truth, I swear, said Naruto, holding up his hand. Well, it's really not a big deal, so let's all forget about it, said Tsunami. They all seemed to accept her request, but Inari was still glaring daggers at Naruto. They exited the room, leaving Naruto and Tsunami alone. Naruto began to rub the back of his head. Sorry about that, I was really drunk and must have passed out in your bed, said Naruto. It's alright, really, just don't do it again, said Tsunami, putting on a smile. I'll make breakfast this morning to make it up to you. You don't have to. I want to. Naruto exited the room so that Tsunami could get dressed. When he entered the hallway, he was greeted to the sight of Inari. Hi. Don't you dare touch my mom, you pervert, said the boy, throwing another glare his way. Naruto began to sweat and laugh nervously. Don't worry, I know who I should and shouldn't go after, said Naruto, growing even more nervous. Inari didn't seem to believe him but left. Naruto went down the hall and turned down the stairs. It wasn't hard to find the kitchen, as it was almost a part of the living room. So what would you all like for breakfast? Said Naruto. Naruto, you didn't really. Kakashi trailed off with his question. Naruto's eyebrow began to twitch. No, I didn't. Now what would you like for breakfast? Said Naruto. Anything but ramen, not because I don't like it, but I would rather have something different, said Kakashi, shaking his hands in front of him when Naruto had glared at him about no ramen. I would rather not lower myself to eat anything made by this poor excuse of a chef, said Hanabi in a cold, emotionless tone. It was truly a talent that Hanabi had to make a comment that was insulting but not hold any smug tone in it, even though it was obvious that she meant to insult said person. Huh, did you say something, Midget-san? Said Naruto with a yawn. It was another talent entirely to be able to annoy her as well as bounce of her comments altogether. Hanabi got up and left without a word. She looked neither angry nor sad, but she was pissed on the inside. Naruto shrugged and began cooking. He made a couple of omelets with peppers and beef on the inside, with a side of rice. It looked rather tasty despite the fact that it was rather ordinary. Wow, I didn't think you were good at cooking anything other than ramen, said Sakura with a smile. Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari entered the kitchen at that moment and took their seats. They looked skeptically at the food. Even though it had a delicious appearance, they doubted the ability of the strange chef. Inari just didn't want to try out because he was pissed that someone was after his mom. However, all skepticism was thrown out the window as they took a bite. Wow, Naruto-kun, this is delicious, said Tsunami. Naruto-kun? Said Inari, spitting out his food. The others stared at her wide-eyed. Naruto didn't seem to notice as he continued to cook. Kun? Said Tazuna, looking at his daughter with a curious gaze. She blushed and looked down at her food. Well, Team 7, we're going to train today. I believe Zabuza is still alive, said Kakashi. Sasuke and Sakura almost dropped their food. The Hunterine was a fake, but I was too tired at the time to notice or do anything. Ah, well, that sucks for you guys, said Naruto, pulling out his sake bottle and taking a swig. I'm going to go out for a bit and enjoy myself later. Naruto walked out of the house and headed towards the forest. It was a really nice day. He basked in the sun as he strode through the quiet forest. So peaceful, he thought. He came to a clearing and sat beneath a tree. He placed his sake bottle beside him, deciding just to enjoy the clouds. He slowly began to feel his eyes grow heavy as he began to fall asleep. A form clad in black was under a different tree, but the sun shone the same way, the same peaceful and tranquil way that he loved. A 5-year-old girl with brown hair stood in front of him. My name is Akane, what's yours? She asked. A boy with a white fox mask over his face looked at her for a moment. Shadows don't have names, he said. Huh? She said, looking confused. You don't look like a shadow. Then I'm not doing my job right, said the figure. Job? Are you a shinobi? She said with another smile. A smile crept onto the figure's face beneath his fox mask as he nodded. Wow, she said excitedly, lifting her hands in the air. Naruto was awoken from his slumber by a gentle nudge. He awoke to the sight of a boy dressed like a girl smiling at him. He immediately started to panic as he checked around him to see if his clothes were on. He was pleased to see he was in the same spot he had fallen asleep in. Thank God, I thought I might have gotten drunk, and he didn't even want to think about that. You shouldn't sleep out here. You'll catch a cold, said the gender-confused youth. Greetings, Girly-Basan, I'm going to tell you right now I don't swing that way, he said as cheerful as possible. The boy began to laugh, and that creeped Naruto out even more. Dear God, even his laugh is girly. Don't worry, despite my appearance I don't go that way either. Naruto looked at him skeptically. The boy's eyebrow twitched at that. May I ask what you were doing out here? Said Naruto. I was collecting herbs for a friend. You? He asked. I was just out for a walk and thought I would take time to enjoy the sky. I guess I fell asleep. SSID Naruto. Ah, I see. There was a pregnant silence for a while. The boy, who was Haku, was thinking of the best way to ask if he was an enemy. Naruto, who was slowly scooting away, was praying that the girly boy wasn't going to try and rape him. Are you a shinobi? Asked Haku. No, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, world's greatest ramen chef and #1 straight girl lover, said Naruto, scooting even farther away from Haku. Haku's eyebrow began twitching even more. I told you I'm not gay. And I totally believe you, said Naruto with a nervous smile. Well, if you're a chef, then why have you come here? He asked. I had to pick up some supplies, Now I'm waiting for my escorts to finish their mission before I head back," said Naruto. "You certainly look strong for just a chef," said Haku, taking a seat next to him. Naruto began to sweat and began to scoot away a bit more. "I have to keep in shape if I want to impress those ladies," said Naruto, trying to stress this. Naruto got up and began to walk away. "I know it seems strange to ask someone who doesn't protect others, but do you have a precious person?" said Haku. "Alright, stop right there," said Naruto. "I told you I don't swing that way. I don't care if you're interested, I am going to leave and find some chick to make out with." Haku just stared at him, his mouth hung wide open. "That's not what I meant by precious person," he shouted. Naruto blinked. "Oh, sorry. Forget it, just I believe that if you have someone to protect you can be truly strong," said Haku. Naruto took a sip from his sake. "Man, that's deep, so who's the guy?" "Why do you assume it's a guy?" asked Haku, whose eyebrow was twitching frantically. "Well, you know." Haku sighed. "Whatever." Naruto gave a loud yawn. "It's a good philosophy, though," said Naruto. Haku looked a little surprised that he was actually listening to him. "Really?" he said. "One of the best things you can do is give your life for someone you care about, however, it can also be one of the cruelest things you can do," said Naruto. Haku raised an eyebrow. "If someone is that precious to you, how would they feel knowing you died for them? A Hokage feels that way every time he sends troops out to die for him, or his village." Naruto's eyes glazed over at that. Haku wondered why he made the Hokage reference. "I see," said Haku. "People will always die, loved ones will always be lost. They can be taken away by the blast of a jutsu, or they can die of old age," said Naruto. "If it becomes a choice, I would rather see my loved ones die of old age." At that moment Haku knew that Uzumaki Naruto was more than he seemed. "You seem as if you speak from experience?" said Haku. Naruto took a sip from his sake bottle. "I'm going to give you some advice now. If you are constantly in the situations that require you to protect your precious person, get out of it now," said Naruto. "A shinobi's life is something no one should live." Naruto got up and began to walk away. "I never said I was a shinobi," said Haku. "I know, but that doesn't mean it isn't the truth." Naruto sat down by the docks not far from Tezuna's house. He let his feet tread over the water. He took a swig from his sake bottle and let out a sigh. "I swear if you touch my mother I'll kill you," said Inari, appearing behind him. "Don't worry, I won't." Inari seemed to nod at this. The small 10-year-old boy took a seat beside Naruto and sat looking at the water. "Grandpa says that it was because of you the shinobi agreed to continue the mission to protect him," said Inari. Naruto remained quiet and took another sip from his sake bottle. "Thank you," said Inari. "I don't want Gato to kill my grandpa." "Are you afraid of Gato?" asked Naruto. "Hell no," said Inari. "Personally, I want to go there and fight him right now, but—" "Your mother," said Naruto, his eyes not leaving the water. "I'm not afraid to die, and I know if I go to fight Gato alone that's just what will happen," said Inari. "I just don't want to put my mom through that, though." "Then you are very wise," said Naruto, getting to his feet. He turned to leave but then paused. "Why don't you use that wisdom to think of something to do? There is strength in numbers and always a time to strike." Inari watched his retreating back and turned to stare out at the lake. It was growing late as Naruto approached the house. After last night's little episode, he decided to lay off on the sake until he got into his room. When he entered the kitchen, it was only Tsunami cleaning the dishes. Everyone was either in bed or doing some last-minute training. He walked up beside her and quietly began washing dishes with her. "You don't have to," she said. "I know, but I want to," said Naruto in a happy voice with a lazy smile. They remained in silence for a while. "I saw from here that Inari was talking to you. I'm sorry if he was rude," said Tsunami. "Not at all, he was just making sure that I wouldn't just happen to wander into your room tonight," said Naruto with a laugh. "Sorry about that, he's very protective of me even though I'm his mother," said Tsunami. "He hasn't had it easy. I was only 14 when I became pregnant with him." "Oh, that explains why you look so young," said Naruto. Tsunami blushed a little at his compliment. "I was wilder back then. When my boyfriend found out I was pregnant, he left us," she said. "After about 7 years I met another man. He became like the father Inari never had. That is until Gato killed him." She spent the next few minutes recounting the events that took place with the man that the town considered a hero. Naruto was in tears by then. End of the story. That is so sahahad, said Naruto as he began shedding tears on the ground. Really, Naruto-kun, it's okay now. We keep him alive in our hearts, and we remember what he did, said Tsunami, trying to comfort him. Well, sniff if you sniff say so, said Naruto. They finished the dishes and went to their own rooms respectively. Yes, Naruto made sure it was his room. Well, at least he thought it was his because it was empty. But Sakura came back from the bathroom 5 minutes later and screamed at seeing him. He went to bed with more than a few bumps that night. Kakashi-sensei, I don't like this, said Sakura, as the mist began to surround them and their charge. Be on guard, said Kakashi. Well, it looks like it's time for our rematch, said Zabuza, appearing from the mist with Haku by his side. Haku, I leave the brats to you. At that moment Zabuza faded into the mist. Sakura, guard the bridge builder. Hanabi and I will deal with this guy, said Sasuke, pointing to Haku. They disappeared in a blur of motion. Kakashi was dodging frantically at the sword attacks that erupted from the mist. He couldn't see Zabuza at all. What's wrong, Kakashi? Can't use that eye of yours without being able to see me, mocked Zabuza. Sasuke was closer to his opponent's speed than Hanabi was, which was probably why he was able to get a few hits in. Haku was very cautious of Hanabi's style, aware of what it could do. That was why he was able to dodge all of her attacks. After Sasuke hit him a couple of times, he became aware of the fact that he would have to step it up a notch. He began forming a couple of one-handed seals. The first set caused ice needles to appear all around them and strike. Hanabi used her Jukin to block all the offending projectiles, while Sasuke simply dodged. However, the needles were only a distraction to give Haku time to complete the other set of one-handed seals. Ice mirrors slowly rose from the ground. And now your fate is sealed, said Haku, stepping in a mirror. 10 figures now stood outside Tazuna's house. They all had smug looks on their faces. They brandished weapons of all types, from sword to spear. 2 samurai stood at the head of them. Tsunami was washing some dishes while humming a happy tune to herself. She turned off the faucet to the sink, and at that moment the door burst open. The wooden splinters were sent across the floor. Tsunami ran out to the living room to see what had happened when the sight of 10 very threatening-looking men in the front door greeted her. She saw Inari run at them with his fists raised. One of the samurai easily caught the attack and lifted the boy up by his hand. Inari lifted himself up closer to his captor's hand and bit down. The man screamed in pain and dropped him. Before he could get away, another hand grabbed hold of him and held him firmly. Please let him go, said a near-hysteric Tsunami. Gato only said bring the kid, the mother is expendable, said one of the samurai. And oh, please don't, shouted out Inari. The samurai that moved closer to his mother gave a sick smile. It was the one that Inari bit in the hand. He backhanded her across the face, knocking her out. Leave her and burn the place with her inside, said the samurai. They all exited the house to the docks. Anyone could see that this plan had been given forethought, as the house was already covered in oil. One of the men threw a torch, and the house instantly burst into flames. Mother! Shouted out Inari as one of the men held his head in front of the scene, forcing him to watch. Tears streamed down his face as he knew the truth. She was gone, dead. The man's hands left Inari's head as he was blown away. Inari's eyes were wide as he felt a gust of wind from when the man was hit. He turned his head and was greeted with a sight he never thought he would see. Hey Inari, said Naruto. Cue guitar music from Trigun. What are you doing on the ground in tears? Said Naruto with a smile. On his back was an unconscious Tsunami. The man that had been punched had shredded through the docks from the force of the blow. He was unconscious on land, blood splattered on his face from a broken nose. The men looked at the newcomer with a small twinge of fear. They held their weapons at the ready. Inari, there is strength in number, and always a right time to attack. Now is the right time to attack, said Naruto. He disappeared and reappeared in the center of the group of men in a swirl of wind and leaves. When he appeared, the dust around him was scattered as if kicked up by the force of his appearing there. They were all frozen still. Naruto held his straw hat over his eyes and he had a small smile on his face. He snapped his fingers and the men all began falling down unconscious. Inari, said Naruto with a large grin. Now is the time to take back your village. Don't tell anyone what I just did because I will just deny it. He said this with another smile before he vanished from their sight. Inari was in a state of awe before he erupted in a large smile and laughed. He tied up all the men and woke his mother. They went out to the village to get some help. Hanabi and Sasuke stood at the center of the ice mirrors back to back. Haku surrounded them in his reflection across each mirror. Sasuke had activated his Sharingan during the battle, which was the only reason he was still alive. Hanabi looked fine, but she was growing tired from the long fight, and she was running out of chakra. Haku was growing worried Hito was low on chakra and would have to end this. Hanabi had her Byakugan activated, so she was able to block all the needle attacks thrown her way. All except one. Haku had pondered why she had been hit in one area and seemed so surprised about it. It seemed the reason dawned on him right then and there. He took a handful of needles and lunged them at a particular spot. Hanabi remained unmoving, completely unaware that the attack was coming for her. But Sasuke saw it. He ran at her and shoved her out of the way only to be hit himself. She looked up at her teammate a little surprised, and then she noticed he coughed up blood. At that moment she knew he had taken a hit meant for her. She was more than a little surprised that he had done it. From what she could gather, her teammates were not too fond of her. Her face remained stony, but she felt a little guilty inside. "He gave his life to get you out of the way," said Haku. "Don't try and trick me," said Hanabi. "My eyes can see a lot of things. One of them is his still beating heart, and the other is the flow of his chakra. However, make no mistake, I will defeat you." She thought back to her feelings of when she had destroyed the water clone. That feeling of rage and anger, she gathered it together. However, this time she brought it under control and concentrated with it. She focused it all into the points of her fingertips. She had spent all her time in wave training this technique she had discovered. She ran in a mirror and merely touched it, and it shattered. The technique was basically an extension of her normal Juken attacks. It was now more refined and did more damage, but ate up more chakra, which is why she wouldn't just use it whenever she fought with her Juken. Haku jumped out of a mirror to try and stop her from breaking another mirror, but Hanabi saw it coming with her Byakugan. This had actually been what she was hoping for. She twisted her body and Haku flew past her. She then grabbed onto his foot before he got away. She pulled him back and his body was now upside down as she let go of him. Hanabi concentrated the full attack into her open palm and slammed it for Haku's chest. Haku, thinking quickly, brought up several ice mirrors in front of him. They were shattered through but had taken a lot off of the initial force of the attack. Even so, it hurt. He was blasted through a mirror behind him, out of his ice prison. He skidded across the ground to a stop, and began to cough. He was still alive, luckily. Hanabi collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath from exhaustion. She was very close to passing out. Haku rose from the ground exhausted as well. He was coming close to giving up. He had failed his master as a tool. He was going to allow himself to die, but he then felt it. "Zabuza-sama is in trouble," whispered Haku. She formed a seal and an ice mirror appeared and he rushed through it. Kakashi charged forward towards Zabuza with his Chidori ringing through the air. His nin dogs held the demon in place as he lunged his attack at the man. Kakashi observed out of the corner of his eye an ice mirror appear. He saw a boy exited in front of Zabuza and stood in front of his attack. The boy threw some needles and Kakashi knew they were heading for the scroll that held his nin dogs to this world. Zabuza stared out as Haku appeared in front of him. His eyes grew wide with panic, realizing what was about to happen. He attempted to move to push the boy out of the way, but the dogs held him down firm. He knew by the time the dogs disappeared from the scroll being destroyed, it would already be too late and Haku would be dead. He was going to watch as the boy he secretly considered to be a son was about to be murdered in front of his eyes. Haku stood there calmly waiting. Time seemed to freeze for him. "Naruto-san, you were right. The best thing I could do was give my life for Zabuza-sama. However, you were also right on another account. I would have preferred it if Zabuza-sama and I didn't have to fight anymore. We could live out the rest of our lives and not worried about being killed. He's been like a father to me and I never got to tell him that I wish things could be different." The lightning-covered hand drew ever closer to Haku's still beating heart. And the boy closed his eyes. The sound of lightning still seemed to ring in his ears and he thought he was dead. A voice entered his head and it was the last voice he expected to hear. "Wish granted, Haku," said Naruto. Haku opened his eyes and was greeted to the sight of Naruto holding Kakashi's lightning-covered wrist. The chef sat there calmly with his legs crossed on the ground. His sake bottle was in his lap and his right hand held his saucer as he took a sip. The other hand held Kakashi's wrist, as it was mere centimeters away from Haku's chest. "Naruto, what are you?" Kakashi was cut off by the chef. "There is no more need for us to fight Zabuza, Kakashi," said Naruto. "Just as there is no more reason for him to fight us." Naruto signaled out somewhere in the mist. Zabuza just looked at him wide-eyed. The dogs were now gone, so he released his jutsu, and sure enough there was Gato with a small group of mercenaries. "He is planning on betraying you," stated Naruto. Zabuza, you no good ass. Gato was cut off as blood filled his throat. A kunai and needle had pierced it. Both had been thrown by Haku and Zabuza. The men froze upon seeing their leader dead. They grew angry and were about to retaliate when an arrow streamed through the sky. A group of villagers 4 times the size of the army appeared. The army of cowards ran off at the sight of them, and the crowd gave a cheer. They all gathered together on the bridge. Sasuke was being carried over by Sakura. She was blushing slightly at being this close to him. They all gave another cheer and celebrated that night. The events were as follows. Naruto hooked up with a bunch of girls, all of which didn't mind being with him at the same time. He was the envoy of every male there. He also prepared a fabulous feast, which was deemed the greatest. He managed to get extremely drunk, expose himself in public, embarrass Hanabi as well as insult her greatly, recite several pages from Ichichi's Paradise to little kids, get beat up by several angry parents, make out with several of the girls he was with, get a beating from Kakashi who was jealous. And now here he was in front of Zabuza, Haku, and Tazuna's family. Well, me and Haku are going to try and play it straight, we just don't know where to go, said Zabuza. Our house was burned down, and now we're homeless, whatever will we do? Said Inari. I have just the solution, shouted out Naruto. A man sat at the famous Ichiraku ramen stand and slurped some ramen and began to gag. What the hell, this ramen sucks, shouted the man. Zabuza charged at the man. What the hell did you say about my ramen? He was strangling the life out of the man. You want ramen, I'll give you ramen when I shove the uncooked noodles down your throat. Zabuza was slammed over the head with a frying pan by Ayam. Zabuza, what did I tell you about hurting the customers? Said Ayam. Sorry, Ayam-san. Zabuza mumbled. Team 7 looked at the scene in a small state of shock from their seats. Why can't you be more like your gay friend Haku? He is a model employee, said Ayam. Haku began crying. I'm not gay, I just like looking nice. Is that so wrong? He said to himself as tears fell from his eye. Inari and Tsunami were laughing from the sink where they were washing dishes. It was so cool of Naruto to give us these jobs here in Konoha since our house burnt down, said Inari. Tsunami nodded. Yes, it sure was great of him to give my daughter a safe environment, said Tazuin from his seat at the counter. He was currently drinking some sake while looking at Zabuza attack another customer for insulting his ramen cooking abilities. Dad, you didn't have to come with us, shouldn't you be supervising the village so they can get back on their feet? Asked Tsunami. And leave my daughter alone in the big city to get raped? Not a chance, shouted out Tazuna, who at the moment was very drunk. Well, I'm leaving now, said Naruto. They all looked at him. He gave them a tired yawn and left, leaving the scene that was slowly turning into chaos. The sheets on her bed were thrashed violently back and forth. Her breathing came in shallow pants, rapidly growing faster and more stressed. Her purple hair stuck to her beautiful features. She bit down hard on her lip, drawing blood, and her fingernails clawed at the sheets. Painful gasps erupted from her mouth as she twisted and turned in her bed. Her eyes shot open and she screamed. She sat up frantically, clutching her neck, gasping for breath. Sweat dripped down her body. She was currently only wearing her panties and a large t-shirt. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks as she fought off the pain as best she could. Her seal had a faint purple glow to it, and almost appeared to be burning her flesh. She rested her head against the window conveniently located next to her bed. The pain slowly began to die down until all that remained was a dull throb. She lifted the sheets off her pale legs and got up. Her hair shadowed her eyes as she stumbled over to the phone and dialed a number. Hello? Said a female voice on the other side of the line. Good morning, Kurenai-chan, shouted the purple-haired woman into the receiver in a cheerful voice. The voice completely unmatched her expression. Her face was dull, cold, and lifeless. The voice was entirely a fake but sounded completely real, a mask one might say. Anko-chan? Why are you calling me so early? Asked Kurenai in a tired voice. I just wanted you to treat me to some dango, said Anko, a small smile playing on her lips, but it too was a sham. Her hair continued to shadow her eyes, giving her an almost ghostly appearance, not that her friend Kurenai could see her. Oh, okay, I don't see why not, said Kurenai. Great, said Anko. Tears were streaming down her face, but any pain or sadness she was feeling remained out of her voice as she spoke. Her smile grew larger, becoming more forced. I'll see you in a bit. She hung up the phone and just stood there. Her hand remained unmoving from the receiver. Her large smile stayed plastered on her face, and the tears that were shed from her hidden orbs began to increase. Mitarashi Anko was coming close to insanity. A 15-year-old boy lay pleasantly on a black tile surface. His large straw hat covered his features as he slept. A fishing rod stood at perfect balance in between his toes. His sandals sat beside his prone chest. His large orange shirt was fully unbuttoned, showing off his perfectly muscular chest. The boy's abs were wrapped up in white bandages meant for those of the injured, yet he wore them for style. Behind him on the same black-tiled surface stood a blue-haired girl with pale eyes. A tremendous blush was on her face as she went through various fighting stances. Her large coat covered her features, however it seemed to only make her sweat more as steam appeared to be in the air. The girl fought down her blush as best she could, but even so it was quite noticeable. Naruto-sensei," she said, trying to ask her question. "What are we doing here?" The boy let out a tired sigh. "Hinata-chan, you are training and I am fishing," he said. "But Naruto-sensei, what could you possibly catch here at the H?" She was cut off as the fishing line snagged something. Naruto instantly sat up and grabbed hold of the fishing rod. One might notice the notoriously perverted blush on his face. He gave a hard tug and the line snapped up to him. On the end of the hook was a snow-white towel. "Eek K!" came a female scream from below. "Kaya, what's wrong?" asked various other female voices. There's perverts on the roof. One of them fished off my towel," shouted out the naked woman. The scene came into focus. The black-tiled surface that both Naruto and Hinata stood on was none other than the roof of the female half of the Konoha hot springs. Naruto stood up right in front of them, all completely unembarrassed by the scene. He had a smile on his face and he winked at them. Some of them blushed, but others grew into a fit of rage. They spotted Hinata behind him too, and all their faces grew with confusion. "Oh my God! We're getting the female perverts now too," said the women. "Get them, girls!" All the women charged forward, abandoning all sense of modesty, as they didn't bother to cover themselves. Hinata looked around frantically in a panic, not knowing what to do. "Hinata-chan," said Naruto with a kind smile on his face as he turned to her. "The second part of your training today is to run." He ran forward and grabbed her hand and jumped off the roof onto the streets of Konoha. Naruto was laughing the entire time. "It's not funny, Naruto-sensei. Now they're going to think I'm a pervert," she said as she looked back at the women catching up to them. "But my dear Hinata-chan, you are a pervert. The book you are hiding in your coat is proof of that," said Naruto. Hinata blushed a furious shade of red in embarrassment, as hugged her coat tighter to her body. The indentation of a rectangular figure came into view. The mention of the book caused Hinata to think of its contents, and before she knew it, a small stream of blood was falling from her nose. "Oh my," said Hinata, closing her eyes and shaking her head. "Ha ha ha ha, what did I tell ya?" shouted Naruto in glee. They entered the market district and ran through the crowd. The women came to a halt in the middle of the market, looking around frantically for the people who had been spying on them. "Damn it, where did they go?" The leader's voice became quiet, as she looked at all the people staring at her and her friends. All the men were blushing madly or passed out from blood loss. The women in the market looked furious and covered some of the children's eyes. The women of the hot spring looked confused for a moment, until realization dawned on them. They all looked down at their bodies and took note of their now nude forms. They all blushed tremendously from embarrassment, and rushed back to the hot springs. Enko sat in a booth with her friend and was now currently stuffing her face with a happy smile. Kurenai stared at her friend in a daze. Where does she put it all?" she questioned. Enko continued to scarf away at the dango in a cheerful mood. Her face reflected her childish behavior as she ate. However, her cloths reflected another side of her personality. The trench coat wasn't that bad, but what was the stuff underneath or lack thereof. An all-too-revealing fishnet shirt clung to her skin, revealing her black lace brow. On her legs she wore a short mini-skirt, which looked like it had been made for someone half her size, showing off her shapely legs and amazing curves. She had a body most women would kill for, it being ironic that she killed for a living. "Is there any reason you wanted me to treat you to dango?" asked Kurenai as her friend continued to devour the food. Enko adopted a confused, childish look. "Other than free dango?" she questioned as she thought about it. "Well, to see Kurenai-chan." Enko hopped across the table and wrapped her arms around her friend's waist. She then began rubbing her cheek against Kurenai's well-defined assets. "Is there any other reason I need?" she asked huskily, somehow forcing a seductive blush on her face. A gleam of playfulness stood in the purple-haired woman's eyes. Kurenai blushed furiously in embarrassment as she looked around the restaurant. Several of the local perverts were watching the scene with nosebleeds while others tried to avoid the scene. Kurenai let out a sigh. She hated when her friend did this. She always ended up greatly embarrassed, but then again she wouldn't give up her friendship with Enko for the world. Anko burst into violent fits of laughter as she rolled off her friend into the seat next to her. She grabbed the last stick of dango and began munching away. Kurenai took out her wallet, and her eyes widened upon finding it empty. "Oh," said Kurenai. Anko looked at her friend. One of the sweet balls was still in her mouth. "Wahufts wang urin h1?" asked Anko with a full mouth. "Well, you see I am apparently out of money." Anko swallowed her food and smiled at her friend. "No problem, I'll take care of it. Why don't you just wait outside?" Okay if you say so," said a confused Kurenai. The Genjutsu Jounin left the dango place, leaving her friend behind. A playful smile erupted on the purple-haired woman's lips. She looked around the room and spotted the waiter, who was obviously new. "Well, at least it's a guy that will make it a lot easier," she thought. "Excuse me, but I would like to pay my bill now," said Anko, motioning for the waiter to come over. He was fairly attractive, still too young though, maybe around 16 or so. I'm pretty sure you just have to leave your money, you don't need to call me," said the boy, rubbing the back of his head. Anko smirked and got up to wrap her arms around his neck. She let herself hang off him so as not to appear taller than him. She brought her legs between his thighs and let her bust push into his chest. She once again forced a seductive blush onto her face with her practiced ease. "You see, I don't have any money," said Anko, bringing her mouth right next to the boy's ear. "Do you think maybe you could let it slide this time?" "Well, I don't know. The boy was fumbling with his words, and Anko brought her leg gently across his thigh. Sure." Anko was behind him near the door in an instant. The mischievous smile played on her face as she walked out. "Great," she said, raising her fist in the air. She left the place and was greeted by the sight of her friend waiting. "Did you take care of the bill?" asked Kurenai. "I guess if the guy's name was Bill," said Anko with a smile. Kurenai's eyes widened in an instant. "Anko-chan, you didn't?" "Didn't what, Kurenai-chan?" said Anko, putting on a confused childlike face. Just as her friend was about to respond, Anko was ran into by a blonde-haired chef and his newly dubbed perverted apprentice. "Ow, that hurt," said Anko from her spot on the ground. Sorry, said a blushing Hinata, bowing a million times as she helped up Naruto. "Hinata?" said Kurenai, confused. "Kurenai-sensei, what are you doing here?" asked Hinata, dropping Naruto back on the ground. "I was just out with a friend today, may I ask what you were doing?" said Kurenai. Hinata looked a little startled at her question and looked at her feet. "We were just, She was just practicing while watching me fish," said Naruto, finally getting up. "We were in a hurry when we bumped into you guys." He wore an idiotic smile on his face. "Sorry we bumped into you, lady," said Naruto, looking at Anko, who was now getting up. Anko looked up at him. At first she was angry, but then at the sight that he was just some 15-year-old kid, she gained a mischievous glint in her eyes. So young, time for some fun, thought Anko. She was behind Naruto in an instant, her right hand traveling under his right armpit onto his exposed chest. "It's quite all right," said Anko, her hand moving over the bandages that covered his waist. "I think I know a way you can make it up to me, though." She rested her head on his shoulder and began stoking the bandages before going underneath them. Her breath grazed his ear and she pushed her breasts forward into Naruto's back. Kurenai sighed at the scene. "Poor kid, Anko is in one of her moods, better stop her before she does something to embarrass him," thought Kurenai. However, all thoughts were silenced as she looked at her friend. Anko's face was now that of sheer surprise, her eyes were wide and the seductive blush she had worn on her face was gone. Instead, it was replaced with a bright pink one that stayed on her shocked face. She looked down at her right breast. The boy's left hand was held behind his back and was now firmly grasping her asset. Naruto's right hand was on his chin, and his eyes were closed as if he was in thought. "Size, see, very nice," said Naruto, nodding his head. "Well, I must say you made this very easy for me, I didn't even have to sweet-talk you." Naruto swung around in a blink and grabbed onto the woman's waist with his right hand. He leaned her down to where her head was almost touching the ground, and brought his face directly in front of hers. He stared in her eyes, not blinking once. They held a seductive glint to them, but there was a small undertone of playfulness. "Shall we?" said Naruto. Anko blushed pink even further, and Kurenai's jaw nearly hit the floor. He's actually embarrassing Anko. I didn't even think that was possible," thought a shocked Kurenai. Anko's face was one that of astonishment. She was completely and utterly speechless. She blinked to get herself out of her confusion. "Okay, this is new, I never would have thought this could happen." She looked up at Naruto again and saw the playful look. It was a look she knew all too well. Ah, so that's how it is. Well, two can play at this game. Sorry about that, said Anko, returning to her previous self. I was surprised that one who seems as young as yourself could be so experienced. She brought her arms around his neck and placed her feet under her behind so she could prop herself up. She didn't want to be completely at his mercy. Well, as you can see, I am very experienced, said Naruto. He picked her up and pinned her against a nearby wall. Anko wrapped her legs around his waist. Well, then I won't have to hold back. May I know the name of one who is as excitable as myself? Said Anko, rubbing a hand across his cheek. Uzumaki Naruto, said Naruto. Midarashi Anko, said Anko as she brought her mouth down on top of his. They wasted no time as their tongues slipped in each other's mouth. Naruto brought the battle into her own mouth, winning in the dominance category. Anko moaned as some of the saliva began to drool down her chin. They continued to kiss passionately while a crowd just stood there slack-jawed in confusion. Dear God, there's two of them, said Kurenai. Naruto-sensei, mumbled Hinata, looking down, a tremendous blush on her own face as she secretly watched the scene with her Byukagen. She hugged the perverted orange novel that lied in her coat tighter. She was definitely going to read some more when she got home. Some blood began to spill from her nose at the very mention of the idea. The two broke apart to catch their breath. They both looked around and noticed the crowd that had gathered. Can we help you? They shouted in unison. The crowd instantly dispersed and everyone went their own way. Naruto sighed. Well, as fun as this has been, Anko-chan, I have to get to work, said Naruto. He set her down and turned, however the woman's arms wrapped around his body. Do you have to, Naruto-chan? Said Anko, putting on a puppy dog pout. Naruto gave a smile. Come to Ichiraku's later, we'll share a sake bottle, said Naruto, walking away. Hinata-chan, we're done for the day. Hinata was gone in an instant, trying to keep her perverted blush down. Naruto left the scene soon after. Anko stood there with her friend wearing a toothy grin. Hooray, I got a new playmate! She shouted, lifting her fist in the air. Well, that was fun. Anko-chan, you're not really going to see him again, are you? Asked Kurenai. Anko blinked and looked at her friend. Why wouldn't I? She asked. My life is far too boring, it's nice to have a playmate. Kurenai sighed and shook her head back and forth. Just take it easy, then again, the way he carried himself you might not have to, said Kurenai. Naruto walked up to the ramen stand and gave out a lazy yawn. He was about to push the small curtains that allowed customers to eat in privacy out of the way when a bald man came soaring out. Naruto barely dodged in time as the man slammed in the ground. Say that again about my ramen, you bastard, say it again, shouted out Zabuza. The sound of metal hitting his skull was heard soon after. Zabuza, you have to stop doing that, said Ayam in an angry tone. Sorry, Ayam-san, said Zabuza, looking down with multiple bumps on his head. Ever since the ramen stand had received its new workers, it became far more chaotic every day. Today, however, it was even more so. Perhaps it had something to do with the new team that now sat by Team 7. Shut it, I know Pig, shouted Sakura. Make me forehead, shouted out Ino. Both Sakura and Ino brought their foreheads together, and were having a glaring contest. Would you two keep it down, and just enjoy your ramen? Said Asuma from his seat next to Kakashi. Honestly, Ino can be so loud at times. So is it true that Naruto-sama works here? Said Asuma, bringing his voice down to where no one could hear him. Hi, said Kakashi. He's very different now, but he is still just as skilled. Try not to bring up the past, and just enjoy the time as his friend. Asuma only nodded. He had a faraway look in his eye. It's been almost 5 years now since our last mission with him, said Asuma. Kakashi nodded as well. Chuji slurped up some of the noodles and sighed. His lazy friend Shikamaru looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Is something wrong, Chuji? Asked Shikamaru. No, it's nothing, just I expected more from the reputation the Ichiraku ramen stand holds, said the Akimiji. Don't get me wrong, that Haku fella makes a pretty good ramen, I was just expecting more. In an instant Ayam was in front of the boy, bowing. Please hold your judgments until later. Haku-chan is new and inexperienced, the one who gave us our reputation should be here shortly, Akimiji-sama, said Ayam, trying to keep the boy as satisfied as possible. All the Akimiji were well respected in the culinary world. Their opinion on a restaurant's food, service and atmosphere could make or break any food-eating establishment. Chuji nodded and waited. He didn't have to wait long as a blonde-haired boy entered the stand. There you are, Naruto-kun. I need one of everything for our friend here, said I am relieved that the boy had shown up for work today. Morning, Naruto, said Sakura upon noticing him. Sasuke gave a nod in his direction and Kakashi waved. The members of Team 10 looked at the boy around their age curiously. Naruto let out a yawn and gave a tired wave to them all. He walked behind the counter without a word. Zabuza, who was in front of the stove, burned his hand, and just before he could slice the thing in half with his sword, Naruto walked in front of the stove. Zabuza froze in mid-swing, barely stopping in time to miss the back of the boy's head. He was sweating furiously at almost killing his superior. Naruto started boiling some water and washed his hands. As he was doing so, Tsunami, Inari, and Haku stopped what they were doing and watched him intently. It was always a treat to see him work in his professional manner. Naruto grabbed a knife and with speed and precision he began cutting up the ingredients for the ramen. His cuts were in fluid motions at blinding speeds that came from years of practice. As he speedily finished with the vegetables, herbs, and meats, he began working the dough. Chuji sat at the counter licking his lips. He could tell by the way the young chef was preparing the meal that it was going to be good. Shikimura looked at the chef with an even more curious gaze as he watched the speed at which the chef preformed. Fast, was his first thought. Naruto placed the ramen bowls on a large tray and placed it in front of Chuji. He then proceeded to place a bowl in front of Shikimura, Ino, Sakura, Sasuke, Kakashi, and Asuma. He then placed another bowl in front of an empty seat, Hanabi's seat. Hanabi sat back away from the group in one of the booths, not paying real attention to the scene. Team 7 didn't know why he always placed a bowl in front of Hanabi's seat. She never ate it, and she rarely sat at the counter, but yet every day a bowl would find its way there when she was present in the stand. I'm sorry, but I don't eat ramen. I'm trying not to gain any weight, said Ino with a small blush that the handsome chef had thought to serve her. Then there is nothing to worry about, said Naruto, Team 10 now hearing his voice for the first time. The old man who owns this place made a special ramen recipe that is completely fat-free. It's his special diet ramen, you won't gain in once, and it still has that great taste. Ino nodded a little hesitantly until she was nudged in the side by Sakura telling her to eat it, and like everyone else who ever seemed to have the pleasure of having one of those noodles grace their lips, she couldn't stop. Naruto gave a lazy smile as everyone enjoyed his or her ramen. He seemed to at that moment finally notice Asuma. Oi Asuma-san, it's been a while, said Naruto with a cheerful smile. It's great to see you, Naruto-san, said Asuma, catching himself. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling he would be causing problems that weren't needed if he referred to Naruto in the honorary suffix. So how's everything going? Asked Naruto. Well, as you can see, I have taken on a team, said Asuma. I'm Ino. Chuji. Shikimura greeted all the members of Team 10. How nice to meet you all, said Naruto with a goofy smile before he yawned. He walked over to a stack of flour bags and propped himself on top of it. He lied down and pulled his straw hat over his eyes. In an instant, snores could be heard coming from him. Man's got the right idea, said Shikimura, lying his head down on the counter. Ayam came by and picked up all their empty bowls. She left Hanabi's because Naruto always seemed to eat it later, even when it was cold. Just as the dishes were deposited in the sink for Tsunami and Inari to clean, a loud voice was heard. Naru-chanin. Naruto perked his head up and woke up. At that moment, Anko walked in with Kurenai not too far behind. Anko-chan, shouted out Naruto with excitement. I didn't expect you to take me up on my offer so soon. Anko hopped over the counter and in an instant she was straddling Naruto. And miss my time with Naru-chan, not a chance, said Anko, bringing her hand down over his pants to where his crotch was. In response, Naruto squeezed her ass through her miniskirt. Everyone's jaw dropped as they started making out right then and there. Even Hanabi did, for she had never seen two people lack such basic modesty. Now it's time to get what I came for, said Anko. It shall be done. People stared wide-eyed at what they could possibly be talking about. Let the wine flow, said Naruto, slamming a large bottle of sake on top of the counter. He then began depositing the liquid into two separate saucers, and he and Anko soon began drinking with large smiles on their faces. Dear God, there's two of them, said Ayam. That's what I said, said Kurenai. It didn't take long before Naruto and Anko had too much. Their faces were completely flushed as they greeted customers. Naruto would greet and seduce various women, while Anko handled the men that walked in. They were scaring everyone away and having a good laugh about it. Eventually, Ayam took action. All right, listen up, you two, shouted Ayam. Naruto and Anko stood at attention in an instant, both giving salutes. It was a rather comedic scene. I lost her train of thought for a moment, as she tried to suppress the urge to giggle. You two are disrupting the customers and scaring them away. I'm going to have to ask you to leave for now. But I am Ne-chan, I work hurry, said Naruto smiling. Yeah, and I can think off a good reason, said Anko, sitting down cross-legged and getting in the thinking position. Don't worry, Anko-chan, will think of something, said Naruto, stumbling as he sat beside her. They were there for about 30 minutes before I finally convinced them to leave. Is it always like this? Asked Ino. Pretty much, said Sakura in response. Ino smiled and soon began to giggle. How fun, I like it here. She turned to her smoking sensei. Listen up, teach, we are meeting here from now on, and that's that. I get to see Sasuke-kun eat good food and have a good laugh. I agree, this food was spectacular, said Chuji. Troublesome, I don't care, said Shikimura, leaning his head on his hand. Alright, I was thinking of doing that anyway, said Asuma. Maybe Kurenai-chan should join us as well. Kurenai looked at him and his suggestive eyes. Her eyebrow began twitching. Perhaps maybe Hinata will come out more being around that Naruto guy, said Kurenai. Then again, she may turn into a pervert. Nah. It's always been you I've loved, said Rin, removing her robes. Please take me. Kai just stood there for a moment before an innocent smile played on his face. If that is what you want. Kai tackled her to the bed and lied on top of her. His muscular chest pressed firmly onto her exposed breasts. He soon found her neck and began sucking on it. He backed off to look in her eyes. He saw the love and passion in them. He soon began going lower and lower until finally. Hinata-sama, is everything all right? Shouted a branch member from outside her door. I thought I heard a moaning. Hinata scrambled to hide the book, her face as red as a tomato. She grabbed a Kleenex and began wiping the blood away from her nose. No, everything is fine, don't worry, she said, still arranging herself as not to give any hints as to what she was doing. Are you sure? Because I was certain that I... No, you were mistaken, she said, cutting him off. She quickly removed her top and held it halfway on her arms. But I was sure. The branch member walked in and saw Hinata staring at him. She was currently in the process of putting on her top. She looked at him, then blinked before she screamed. The Hyuga member closed the door in an instant with an intense blush on his face. Hinata-sama, I'm sorry, I'll leave you alone. And like that, the branch member was gone. Hinata let out a sigh. That was close. She had been right in her assumption that the man would come in. She looked down in embarrassment at how devious her mind had worked in taking off her top to make it look like she was changing. Naruto was really rubbing off on her, as were the books. However, it wasn't her fault. For a deprived child who was forced into a life of plans and expectations, it was amazing to be able to escape to the world in those novels where the characters had no limits, no modesty, and everything was pure passion and romance. She knew that she would now be considered a pervert, but it was worth it. Orochimaru stood before the current Hokage. The man was a large, bulky sort and had a thick beard. His body was decorated with various scars, and tremendous swords sat at his side, towering over his large figure. And why should we help you? Asked the Kage. You are already at tension with the Leaf due to the Shinobi War, but if you align with me, I can give you something of great interest. Orochimaru let his words hang. And what would that be? Asked the Kage with a bored expression. Orochimaru walked up to the man and leaned in next to his ear. The bloody whirlwind, was all he said. The large man visibly froze at that. Orochimaru backed off and saw the man's wide eyes. You know his identity? Questioned the man, suddenly taking Orochimaru far more serious. The one responsible for the Stone Massacre 5 years ago, as it is now called. Your greatest enemy, Konoha's bloody whirlwind. Yes, I know who he is, said Orochimaru, trailing off. If you help me, I will reveal his identity to you upon our attack. Yes, agreed the Kage in almost an instant. Orochimaru nodded and vanished in an instant. The bloody whirlwind will not be easy to take down. I will need an advantage to gain a surprise attack, some way of infiltrating the village, and I know just the tool. A sick smile appeared on the large man's face. Akane, said the man. In an instant, a girl no older than 10 appeared before him. The girl wore a serious expression in front of him. Her brown hair was done back in a ponytail. Yes, Hokage-sama? You and your team will be going to the Chunin exams several months from now. We are going to war with Konoha. And may I ask why? She questioned, raising an eyebrow. The Kage smirked, and in a similar way that of Orochimaru, he walked up to her and placed his mouth by her ear. The bloody whirlwind. At that, her eyes widened, and one might notice the shaking fists she now possessed. The air grew dark as her chakra began to circle around her. Plants that were in various corners of the room withered and died, dried up by something. Very well. The sun was setting in the village of Konoha. Naruto and Anko strode down the streets with broad grins upon their faces. Naruto's arm was on Anko's shoulders and Anko's arm was on Naruto's shoulders. They marched down the town proudly, still very much drunk. Their faces were flushed to a great degree, so it didn't take a genius to know what they had been doing. Well, maybe it did. They had done a lot of things in town, from public disturbances to freaking out the kids in the park. They did it because it was all harmless fun. No one was hurt, and even a few people laughed. Their steps were in sync with one another. They passed a group of still attractive women in their early 30s. As Anko and Naruto walked by, one of them mumbled something. Snake slut. At this, Anko froze only a foot or so away. Her smile was gone, as her back was turned to them. A second after they had stopped, Naruto began stumbling backwards. Perhaps the sudden stop had thrown him off balance. He eventually fell and grabbed onto the woman, who had made the comment, skirt, in an attempt to stay up. It tore as he landed on his back, revealing a black lacy thong. The woman blushed insanely at that. The smile was back on Anko's face, however no one had even noticed it had left in the first place. Wow, I don't even think I own that kind, said Anko with drunken smile. The woman blushed even more and grabbed hold of the torn skirt from Naruto's hands. Hee, sorry about that, said Naruto, getting up, his face equally as flushed as Anko. The group of women ran off completely mortified. Anko swung her arm around Naruto's shoulder, and he did the same, until they were in the previous walking position they had been in before. Onward, Naruto-chan, shouted Anko. Hi, Anko-chan, said Naruto with equal enthusiasm. Anko's smile was even wider than before. She didn't know if what had just happened was on purpose or an accident. Her drunken mind couldn't process it, but at the moment she was happier. They arrived at her apartment soon after. Don't be a stranger. It's a lot more fun if you come to work, said Naruto, still drunk. Okay, shouted Anko, smiling widely as she walked up to her door and opened it. Naruto left soon after. Anko closed the door, and her smile disappeared. Her face remained flushed, but it now wore a deep frown. Snake slut. That line appeared in her head. She walked over to her bed and lied down before passing off into sleep. The boy with the fox mask stood in an open field in the forest. He spun around, looking frantically at all the bodies soiling the earth. The 5-year-old girl was in front of him, crying. Monster, she said calmly. She looked down and clenched her fists tight. They began to shake with anger. Monster. Monster, 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 she screamed repeatedly, as she shook her head back and forth. He felt himself take a step back and then stopped. He felt something wet dripping on his feet. He looked down, and eyes widened. He looked at his hands, covered in blood, so much blood. It flowed off them in streams through his fingers, each red river splashing the ground and dyeing it a new color. He tried to shake it off, but it continued to flow. He heard the girl scream again and looked up. She now brandished a kunai she had gotten off one of the fallen bodies. I'll kill you, she said in a whisper, struggling to find her cracking voice. The boy took a step back, or at least tried to. Something had gripped his foot, and was now holding him in place. He looked down and screamed in panic. One of the dead bodies had come to life and was holding on. Naruto looked back and saw one by one the sea of bodies began to rise. He looked into the forest, and saw ghostly shadows appearing. Each face was another blank expression. Their identities lost to him in the swarm of confusion that was his job. Soon more of the bodies began to grab hold of him. He struggled and panicked, even attempting to bat a few away, but it was all in vain. They continued in countless numbers, and the little girl slowly walked over to him. She held the kunai in her hands high as she drew closer. She stopped barely a few inches away. Die. Ah! How are you doing this? Shouted Shikamaru in the ramen stand. Naruto stood behind the counter, a shogi board in front of him. Anko was clinging on his back and rubbing herself against him. I'm afraid I have no clue what you're talking about, said Naruto. On the other side of the counter sat Shikamaru, practically tearing his hair out. He put his hands together and stared at the board as if it were on fire. His eyes scanned rapidly. It just doesn't make any sense, said Shikamaru. Naruto-chan is amazing, shouted Anko, holding up a sake bottle. You deserve some of this while you tell me all about your victory. But of course, Anko-chan, said Naruto with a drunken smile. He turned away from the game and held his sake saucer out. Anko then began pouring some with a goofy grin. Let's see where to begin. It all started when I moved one of those little wooden thingies around the board. Shikamaru practically cried as he heard Naruto explain an elaborate story that absolutely made no sense in the world of shogi. How does he keep beating me? Let it go, Shikamaru, said Asuma, taking a drag from his cigarette. Better men than you have tried and failed to figure out the way that boy's mind works. But it doesn't make any sense. He was just randomly moving pieces at random intervals of time. He said he's never even played before, said Shikamaru. Geez, it's just a game, said Ino as she slurped up some more noodles from her ramen. I never thought you would freak out this much about it. I never thought he would lose, said Chuji. Enko and Naruto were currently on the ground battling with their tongues. Inari looked at them from the sink as he washed dishes. He looked from them over to his mother, who was currently squeezing the life from a rag in her hands as she glared jealously over at the two. A deep blush was on her face, and her expression was not exactly anger but rather disappointment. Inari, being the innocent 10-year-old he was, didn't know what to think. However, one question did pop into his mind. Mommy, is Enko-chan Naruto's girlfriend? Tsunami looked away from the two at her son and sighed. She bent down to his level and put a hand on his head. She then smiled. Inari, do you know what a whore is? Inari nodded. Good, that'll save us some time. While Naruto and Enko are not whores, they have the same playful type of attitude. This allows them to be more intimate without having to commit to each other. Oh well, then do you want to be playful with Naruto as well? There was an awkward silence between the two for a while. Tsunami's mind was working a mile a minute, trying to think of what to do or say. Oh my daughter, how could you? Said Tazuna as he stumbled behind her, scaring Tsunami half to death. One might notice the red flush across his face. I thought those days were behind you. Now you're gonna go out and start. Dad! Shouted Tsunami, face beet red. She was embarrassed beyond belief. What are you doing here? When did you get here? A father is always there when his child needs him, said Tazuna. Tsunami just looked at him. Fine, I have nowhere else to go during my day. Where's I am and that no-eyebrow fella, and his gay friend? Across town, Haku sneezed. Oh, you hear that? Some luck guy must be talking about you, said Ayam. Haku fell to his knees and started crying. Not that Ayam saw. Comedic tears were trailing down his face. Zabuza-sama, why does everyone think I'm gay? I'm not, I'm really not. Zabuza just stared at him. This is really becoming an obsession of his. Maybe he really is. No, can't think those thoughts. It's because you dress like a girl, said Zabuza and then walked away. Oh, those guys, they just went out to do some shopping, said Tsunami. And when is the actual owner of the store coming back from his trip? I would like to know if my fragile child's job is secured, said Tazuna. Tsunami looked up and put her finger on her chin, as she thought. You know, I'm not really sure. I'll ask Nara. She turned to see that Naruto was still busy. I am when she gets back. Sasuke let off a cough to get the young chef's attention. Naruto stopped kissing Anko and looked up. He got off of her and went over to him. Anko still had a wet trail of saliva down her chin. What can I do for you, Sasuke-san? Said Naruto cheerfully, as if he had not just come from the floor. I would like a refill, said Sasuke, holding out his bowl. I would as well, said Sakura beside him. Oh yes, sure, I forgot about Midget-san anyway, said Naruto as he refilled their bowls. He then went and placed Hanabi's bowl in front of the usual empty chair in the stand. Kakashi looked up from his book as Naruto was walking away. Naruto, not to butt in or anything, but not only does Hanabi never eat the food when it's placed there, but she's not even here in the stand. Naruto stopped mid-step and turned his head. He rushed over to the counter and looked around at all the booths. Midget-san! He yelled in the stand. Midget-san, are you there somewhere? Team 10, the ramen workers, and surprisingly Team 7 had finally noticed the Hyuga's absence as well. Where is she? Asked Sakura. Well, I'd imagine since it's her birthday tomorrow, she's at home preparing the festivities. Her what? Shouted everyone in the stand. Didn't you know? Said Kakashi innocently. The Hyugas are having a large party with more than half of Konoha attending. All the clans will be there. Huh? Hyuga Hanabi sat in front of a mirror brushing her beautiful brown hair. While she didn't wear a smile, she was in a particular good mood. Even though she wasn't the heiress to the clan, she was still the head's daughter, and as such she was allowed a large party as recognition of that. It was also her chance to show she was a model Hyuga and would do her clan proud. It was a minor hope, but she felt if she could demonstrate she was more proper and deserving than her sister, the clan might reconsider placing her as a branch member. A knock sounded from her door, and she called for the person to enter. She turned around and for the first time in a while a smile appeared on Hanabi's lips. "Oba-chan," said Hanabi. An elderly woman walked in, a smile on her face. "Well, hello there, little Hanabi," said the woman with an even bigger smile. Hyuga Himiko was the mother of current Hyuga head Hyuga Hayashi. Former head of clan herself and now one of the chief elders in the Hyuga Council, she was a very important woman. She was also the kindest, nicest, and most selfless Hyuga of all, second only to Hinata, not that anyone knew that about the later. Yet she was also strong and firm, and the only person in the clan Hanabi had any love for. Unlike the rest of the clan, and elders who showed Hanabi little acknowledgement, her grandmother was kind and supportive. In fact, the only thing that Hanabi didn't like about her grandmother was that she treated Hinata just as well. But she wasn't going to let her sister ruin the one person that made her happy, so she ignored that little detail. "Oba-chan, how are you? What are you doing here?" asked Hanabi. "Well, you know me, I had to see my little Hanabi before her big day," said Hitomi with a smile. "Also, I must inform you that your escort was sadly called away on a mission, but I believe I have an idea of someone who can help." Hanabi nodded. Her escort was to be a member of the branch family. His job would have been to follow her, dance with her, and basically make sure she had a good time. She couldn't help but wonder who her grandmother would get to be her new escort. Hinata stood on her training ground with her teammates. Their sensei was currently giving a lecture on how to use their abilities as one. After she was done explaining, Hinata called their attention. Most of you have probably already heard, being members of major clans yourself," said Hinata looking down at the ground nervously. "But tomorrow is my sister's birthday, and well, I'm allowed to invite anyone I wish to, so would you all like to come?" "Well, I think my mom was gonna force me to go anyway, so why not?" said Kiba with a smile. "My clan was also asking me to attend. Coming with you instead would make no difference in their eyes, so yes," said Shino in his monotone type voice. Hinata smiled, then looked over at her sensei, who just gave a happy nod. Hinata bowed to them. "Arigato," said Hinata. In a different training area, another group sat. One boy with strange eyebrows was currently counting out impossible numbers as he pounded a log. He was like a mini clone of his sensei, who was currently shouting out something about flames of youth. A brown-haired Hyuga boy stood next to a tree not too far away, watching the scene. Behind him, a girl with buns in her hair was currently throwing kunai at a target, hitting the bullseye dead on. It was amazing because she was reading a magazine as she did so. "Listen, a team," said the Hyuga boy. "Quiet, my youthful student Lee, our beloved comrade Niji has something to say," said Guy with a little too much enthusiasm. "What is it, Niji?" asked Tenten. "Tomorrow is my cousin's birthday," said Niji. His teammates took note that he clenched his fists as he said this. "I would like it if you all attend. While you all lack the importance of most of those coming, it would be nice if you came." Team Guy found it very hard to keep straight faces at the awkwardness in Niji's voice. "We will attend this party and demonstrate the flames of youth," shouted Guy. "Guy-sensei, the flames of youth shall burn brightly as I Rock Lee enter the dance floor," shouted Lee with excitement. "That it will, my beloved student, and maybe finally Tenten will grace us with a more feminine flaming passion than she normally does,"